who knows? We'll see. I guess stepping down and step away and reevaluate things and see where we're at. I'm a free agent. I'm in the transfer portal. So yeah, it's a different feel. But like I said, I'm at peace, and I did not want to be that guy that overstayed his welcome and people just saying, hey, when's this guy going to leave? That was not my intention ever, and I hope I didn't do that. I'm sure with some people I did do that, but to me the timing was right.
Welcome on in, everybody. Happy December 26th to you. Thanks for being on the program here with us. We are live here at KSL, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome into what has become quite the interesting day here at Broadcast House in the state of Utah and the state of Michigan. We've got you covered here. Alex Kirry, Lloyd Colson in studio here with me as Alex Napolis is. We've all been all hands on deck today. Every person basically available here at the station. If they're not here, they're coming on because we're talking about the possibility of Kyle Whittingham heading to Ann Arbor to be the head coach at the University of Michigan. When we all zigged, Coach Whittingham zagged, and here we are talking about the all-time winningest coach at the University of Utah, heading to Michigan possibly. It's not even just about possibly. It's about even what OCs is he going to take? What kind of scorched earth is going to be left behind if Kyle Whittingham does end up heading to Michigan? And the leading name, according to so many sources out there, it's not just about Lloyd, whether or not Kyle Whittingham might go to Michigan. It's like, who's he going to take with him? Now, nothing has been actually everything's being reported, but nothing is being confirmed yet. I would anticipate with all of this news kind of being thrown around there. I mean, it's not – we didn't get a letter for the Players Tribune, Lloyd, but we did get Coach Whittingham. Last week, of course, he heard the sound coming in when he finally gave the press conference. And he said, I'm stepping down, stepping away. I've hit the transfer portal. We all kind of chuckled about it, and yet here we are talking about the transfer portal really being a thing, and that might be the case as the University of Michigan – now, isn't just looking for somebody to help him out, looking for somebody to clean this place up. I'm shocked because I didn't know if he wanted to have that kind of a responsibility to clean a place up.
No, I didn't think so. I didn't think so either. There's a lot of heavy – I mean, let's call it heavy lifting. I mean, Michigan is Michigan. They've got money. That place – I mean, there is some cleaning up they have to do. But I did not think that we, obviously we were taking some days, had some days to make up for we had the long football season, but you know what? That's what we do. We, if news breaks and, we need to be on air to talk about it, that's what we're going to do. And
helping us out right now, Patrick Kinahan joining us.
We have hosts everywhere,
We do. We got everybody,
everywhere.
Boots on the ground everywhere. Scotty G in Tucson, ready to call a bowl game. And, guys, as we heard this one, and PK, your story just went up on KSL.com. You can go kind of take a look at this because, and the whole idea would be, I don't know, we've all been shocked because I think we made the mistake of guessing for Kyle Whittingham what his future would look like. How would this thing look if he were to leave the University of Utah and head to Michigan?
Well, I suppose that what we think is different than what we thought last week. But at the same time, I think it was last Tuesday. Yeah, it was last Tuesday. I was coming back from California, and my plane out of Long Beach was delayed because of fog. So I had some time, and I was bored. And people like me can be dangerous when they're bored. So I started opening up the phone, talking to people, and I received a text from Kyle that said, hey, basically, I'm free to do what I want. And so at that point, which would have been last Tuesday, it was obvious that the Michigan job would be in play. And I haven't spoken to him since. I've spoken to a family member this morning that said these are exciting times. And so I believe he's going to take the job, and it's a matter of who he takes with him. And he doesn't have a huge circle of contacts because he's coached basically in Idaho and in Utah for 40 years. And so a lot of those contacts are people that we know. People at BYU staff, which seems like half the staff, if not more, is from Utah, or at least has Utah connections, University of Utah, and then certainly the state of Utah. And Jason Beck, why wouldn't you bring him? And why wouldn't you bring Dampier? Dampier did not exactly shut the door on him coming back next year. He hasn't announced his re-signing, which is absolutely ridiculous. But it's what we do in college sports these days. They announce they're re-signing at a place they're already at. It's totally ridiculous. And college players being eligible from being drafted, and now they can play in college. So it's totally upside down. So who's to say that he doesn't get Jason Beck doesn't go to Michigan, lights it up, and he's coaching waiting for the 66, 67, 68-year-old. That seems plausible. I was also heard Dampier to ASU, for that matter, because his high school coach is a full-time coach on the ASU staff. So we shall see how that plays out. So you got all those things going on. And Kyle, when he got the Utah job in the first place, that night I talked to him, and he asked me, he said, what job do you think I should take? And I said, well, I think your heart's at Utah. And obviously he ends up taking Utah. I haven't spoken to him today. I haven't texted with him today. But I think there's some other issues that I just simply will not go into that will have him being announced as the coach most likely later today.
Scotty G on the road calling a football game today, but obviously this news hits all of us with a lot of interesting angles, all of the things that we've seen kind of play out. And again, it's not just about a program that needs some cleaning up. It's a program that wants to have success immediately. They have tons of talent. The only question about, the quarterback situation could be if Devin Dampier goes to Michigan, what do you do with Bryce Underwood, who reportedly is a, $10 to $12 million man or whatever it is over his career? I don't know what that looks like, but when you saw something like this, Scotty, did you think, oh my goodness, there's no way that this is going to be true? I think we all sort of didn't want to believe that, oh no, he's not going to be able to take, or he doesn't want to take this job, but deciding for Kyle Whittingham's never been a good route to take.
Yeah, no, and the interesting thing in all of this is this all seemed fishy. I mean, right from the start, it seemed fishy. The press release saying that he's stepping down instead of retiring. So, and then when Kyle got that media availability and he's dropping in transfer portal, he's saying, I'm a free agent. I want to see what this is like. And so that was your first indication, like, okay, for whatever reason, it didn't end well at Utah. And I don't know what happened at the University of Utah, but the fact is, if Kyle Whittingham had gas left in the tank, he needs to be the head coach of the University of Utah. Plain and simple. End of story. If he wants to keep coaching, then he needs to be at the University of Utah. And somebody screwed that up. Now, I don't know who. I'm not blaming anybody. To be Kyle Whittingham as the head coach at the University of Utah. And Morgan Scally, I know that his time has come, and Morgan, I think, will be great. Morgan will do a tremendous job. But it just blows me away that Kyle Whittingham is still a head coach in the FCS football or FBS football, and he's not going to be at the University of Utah.
It's wild because I think that we anticipated, a guy riding off into the sunset, PK. That's what we were preparing for, and he wasn't prepared for it. Why is it that taking a job like this is going to have, kind of some messy implications? Who knows what the future might hold? That's got to be made attractive to him, and it's not just the money part for him. I would assume that he would like to have a lot of things in place to where he could have success at the University of Michigan. And, of course, the winningest program in the history of college football. They want him to have success very, very soon. How do you do that with the possibility? Is there even a world where sanctions even happen anymore in college football?
Sanctions? Well, what are you? What are you like? Is it the year 2000 here? Sanctions? Hey, come on. Is there even a body? We have Bronco Mendenhall. Scotty can talk about this. We have Bronco Mendenhall weekly, and he would just make a joke of the tampering. And there was a hotline. He called it a phantom hotline, and nobody ever answered it. Or if they answered it, if you left some message there, I don't know if they ever heard it, or they certainly didn't enforce it. I mean, I had a coach tell me 2 weeks ago that I asked him, I said, the transfer portal doesn't start till January 2nd. Are you allowed to contact people until before then? He said, no, but everybody's doing it. He said, it's the schools that win do that. And we know Michigan wins, and we know that, my gosh, they had on the field and off the field issues. So Kyle, if you're going to go, you don't go to New Mexico State. No offense to the other Aggies. I love them dearly. You're going to go to Michigan, and you're basically, let's call it like it is here with Kyle Whittingham. Who's to say that he doesn't win big there? And what he brings is a ton of credibility. He's a Hall of Fame coach. How many times do you have a situation like this and you replace him a week later with a Hall of Fame coach? That would be approximately never. It's literally never happened. But this crazy world in which we live in, clearly he was prodded to retire, but they didn't force him out enough to actually do it. They probably thought he would retire and have that cushy job making almost $1 million. Well, he basically gave them the finger and said, forget that. I'm going to go coach. I'm continuing. I'm 66 years old. I'm still fired up, and I want to keep doing it. And now I'm going to go show the world, man. What can I do at Michigan? Obviously, he's going to win big. Where is Ohio State in relation to Ann Arbor? You know, he's the school down south again. He's going to have that, right? Isn't Michigan a little higher? My wife's mother grew up in Ann Arbor, and I've already texted some family members this morning and said, "Oh, you'll absolutely love it there." I've been there. Bob Seger, and Whittingham is a classic rock guy. Bob Seger grew up in Ann Arbor. I mean, come on. This is a great match, man. He's turning the page. There he goes on the road again, playing star. Yeah, that's who he is. He's playing star again at Michigan. Good for him.
Yeah, I want to know, too, because we obviously talk about what the possibility will look like for the future of Michigan football. And I think, as your piece points to, too, I mean, this is a guy who's got a squeaky clean reputation. He will clean a place up. I think that he needs to, and he'll do what he can to be able to do it. And then there's the part, Scotty G, about the scorched earth that's left behind here at the University of Utah. I think we all know, like you said, Morgan Scalley is as talented as it gets. There's a reason he's been the coach in waiting. There's a reason that he got the job that he's going to get. The question is now, how do you recover from the idea that you could end up losing that offensive coordinator after just one season? Losing also the possibility of maybe some other staff in there. I mean, this could even affect the BYU staff going forward here. This is not just a big hire for Michigan. This could affect everybody around here.
Oh, the amount of dominoes that are going to fall from this is going to be ridiculous because, hey, you know what? If I'm Kyle Whittingham and I need a defensive coordinator because Morgan obviously is going to be the head coach of the University of Utah, who's your first phone call? I call Jay Hill. Now, I don't know if Jay's been called or not,
right?
But that's the guy I call immediately saying, hey, Jay, come to Ann Arbor with me. Let's make a lot of money and make a name for ourselves here in Michigan. Now, I don't know if Jay answers that phone call or not, but I think if you're doing your job, and as PK mentioned, you want to keep your circle tight, then you call Jay Hill immediately and say, Jay, you want to come with me? What are they paying down there? Well, guess what? I can triple it. So whatever you want, let's go. And then you look at, obviously Jason Beck. You've got to do, to your point about Bryce Underwood, you've got to do whatever you can to keep Bryce Underwood.
Yeah.
Love Devin Dampier, hell of a quarterback for sure, but Bryce Underwood's at a different level. So you got to do whatever you can to keep Bryce Underwood. And I think Jason Beck, with the offense that he's put up over the last couple of years, you're getting Devin Dampier on steroids with Bryce Underwood. So I think that's got to be appealing to him. And then you look at, hey, you know what? You've got one of the best D-line coaches in the country in Lewis Powell. Say, Lewis, hey, how would you like to become the highest paid defensive line coach in college football? Sharif, how would you like to be the highest paid safeties coach or the highest paid special teams coordinator in all of college football? I can do that now because Kyle Whittingham, to your point, PK, Kyle Whittingham's gone through his career as being the plucky underdog. He's always been the guy who's done more with less, whether it's beating Alabama in a Sugar Bowl or coming into the Pac-12 as the new kid on the block, and then all of a sudden winning Pac-12 title games and going to the Rose Bowl. Oh, look at David on his way to beat Goliath, and he's done such good things. They're such hardworking, bust their tail guys, and they're doing it with less talent. Now you give him an unlimited budget, and you give him all the resources he could possibly think of, all the talent he could possibly have, and then let's see what Kyle Whittingham could do. This could get really interesting really quickly.
As you look at this thing play out, PK, obviously, I mean, we all talked about this, like this guy, he would just ride off into the sunset when he was going to be done. How much of this is the fact that this guy doesn't just have a lot in the tank, he's got, all of it still potentially in tank, and all the things that he's going to bring with him experience-wise. From a winning standpoint, how does he affect Michigan right out of the gate? Because bringing in an OC is one thing, but there is going to be the side of where you got to clean up a program a little bit, and they're anticipating that from an administrative standpoint, he's got to make sure that all those things get dialed up because there has to be an image situation that Michigan has to. There's no way Biff Poggi would have ever gotten that gig. You've got to clean up the entire place and blow it all out. And so this is the way that they do it, is bringing in a guy like Kyle Whittingham.
I can recall when Dillingham got the job at ASU, obviously we've had it going back and forth with my allegiance to the Sun Devils, and he's called me out in public. We've had fun. He told me, he said, the days of taking 3 to 4 years to rebuild a program are over. That you can go in the transfer portal and you could transform literally immediately. And so he's going to give you most likely 3 years, right? And so with that in mind, if you are a kid who wants to get to the NFL, particularly on the defensive side, who better to train you? Look at all the kids that he's put into the NFL that nobody threw a parade or we had a big hubbub when they signed or committed with Utah. And then we see a year or two later, who is this kid? And this kid is really good. I can recall, what was the one kid? Eric Rowe. Remember him? Was a defensive back for Utah. And so we're standing on the sidelines. We used to be able to go to practice just a few years ago. It's the first day and they break into the scrimmage, certainly the first week where they do some teamwork, which is basically a scrimmage, without the live tackling. And he was with the second team. And so I went up to him afterward. I said, did you have any idea? He's literally 18-year-old freshman. He said, I had no clue where I was going to fit in. I had no idea. And then I go to Kyle afterward. We're walking back to the football facility. I said, what about this Rowe kid? Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, this kid has got NFL potential written all over him. We knew. That's why we recruited him. Well, he's from Texas. Why the heck didn't Texas recruit him? Texas A&M. I could go down the list, right? In those days, they were Mountain West. They weren't even maybe they were Pac-12. I can't remember. I think they probably were Pac-12. But the fact is that Eric Rowe, he identified Eric Rowe and got him into the NFL for several years to where he gets the pension now and he can really play it. He was a smart kid too, so he's probably going to parlay that money into more money. Well, that's the kind of a bill. I was talking to Tom Homo last week, and he said they were on the sidelines. Tom Homo was a coach at Cal and Stanford, and they were at some school in California, and he's looking at his list, and then he looks at Kyle's list, and Kyle's got a list of guys that nobody else has on the sidelines, and a bunch of schools are recruiting at that place because Kyle could see something that others can't. He's got a track record. I couldn't even begin to name all those dudes. Now he goes to Michigan, and virtually every one of those kids has a slew of stars that precede their name. Well, he's still going to need to coach him up. That's what he can do. So I see no reason why he doesn't immediately install law and order and get that program back. I mean, they did win the title a couple years back. Obviously, Harbaugh was suspended for half the season, and Moore apparently was a train wreck and was going to be suspended starting next season and was already suspended some games this year. So with all that in mind, immediately clean that up. And then I think the riches of talent will flow unto him. They get 100,000 people every week. Ann Arbor on game day, having been there multiple times, is as good as any place, including the NFL. It's probably even better than that stupid soccer over in Europe.
Has to drop the soccer reference, of course, the stupid soccer reference during this get-go.
DJ's not even on, PK. Why are you giving shots on soccer, man? I know that's just habit.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it. We'll get DJ's thought later, and I'm sure soccer will come back up. Yeah, go ahead.
But the thing to PK's point that I think he's spot on about, I was I'm a Broncos fan, so I'm always keeping eyes on the Broncos, and Carini Reed signs a undrafted free agent contract with the Broncos, and George Payton, who's the general manager of the Broncos, was asked, well, what led you to sign him? And he said, because he went to the University of Utah, and we've had great success with the University of Utah. And when we know kids coming from that program, if they're tied with another player in our evaluation, we'll always go with the Utah guy because we know what we get out of the University of Utah. We know the scheme they run. We know what they develop, how they develop those players. And so we know they're going to fit in very quickly. And so that's what you go on that recruiting trail. Say, not only are we coming to Michigan, not only are we going to pay you more money than anybody else, not only are you going to play in front of 100,000 people and on national TV every single solitary game, but we're going to get you ready for the NFL because we put dudes in the NFL. We put dudes with no stars in the NFL. Eric Weddle, heard of him? Yeah, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Guess what? Nobody recruited that guy except for us. But guess what? We put him in the NFL, and he's probably going to go in the Hall of Fame. So you're a 5-star guy. Just imagine what we can do with you in a year or two in our program. So let's go. Let's load up. The only thing that could be negative recruiting against Kyle Whittingham would be, well, guess what? Who are the quarterbacks that he's developed? Who are the quarterbacks he's put in the league? Well, guess what? You can figure that out really quickly with Jason Beck and say, look, we turned Devin Dampier into a superstar. Bryce Underwood, imagine what we can do with you in this offensive system. It just makes too much sense. And back to your point about the image, like Michigan has an image problem right now. They don't have a win-loss. Even last year, they won games. They're fine from a win-loss standpoint. What they need is somebody to come in and provide an image of, we're taking this seriously. No more guys taking footage of other teams wearing a Groucho Marx mustache on a sideline. No more of the issues that you've dealt with the previous head coach. We're going to hire the Mormon guy from Utah. Who better to clean up the program than Kyle Whittingham and still win a hell of a lot of games as well?
So you've got a handful of issues, of course, in Michigan. The Sharon Moore firing and the whole weirdness that's come out with that, and you know the charges that he's facing of misdemeanor stalking, felony home invasion, breaking and entering. You've got that. You've got the sign stealing situation. You had the staffer who was breaking into people's emails. All of this, by the way, was happening during one of their best runs in the history of their program, which is wild to me that they had so many of these things going on, all this misconduct. The president of the university gets dismissed by the Board of Regents because of misconduct with an alleged employee of the university. All these things add up to. They were still able to have success even though all this crap was going on in the background. I would imagine if they get somebody with a head on screwed straight, PK, you're going to get a program not just cleaned up, but you could be right onto the track of winning immediately.
Oh, I don't see why not, particularly too at Michigan. You really have to take a chance as guys. Now, Kyle was known a little bit for taking a chance, right? Darren Carrington got kicked out of Oregon. Running back Devontae Booker had some issues in junior college. And both of those guys came to Utah and kept their noses clean. And Booker played in the NFL. They also had Josh Gordon. Remember him? And he could never pass a drug test. And so they got rid of him. And so he never actually took the field. It's a sad, sad story because the kid has had NFL talent. But at Michigan, do you need to take a chance on guys? Do they really? Unless you're freaking whomever. I mean, the greatest thing ever, somebody else is waiting in line, right? So unless you got good character kids, what's the point? Because you can have the talent. Now you can have talent and character. If these kids got bad, they're knuckleheads, Kyle's going to have no use for them, especially now, because never underestimate the Whittingham motivation. Now, I'm talking about Kyle's father, who's in the great beyond. And I'm talking about Kyle just had a grandbaby here a couple of weeks ago. Even that grandbaby at the grandbaby stage, at the baby stage, has the fierce Whittingham motivation to, I'll show you, right? So you combine a little bit of revenge and a little bit of spite. Well, let's face it, man. That guy thrives on that stuff. Just ask Joe Glenn about that, right? Joe Glenn with some innocuous comment in the student union. Oh, we're going to win this week. And there we are. The Utes are up by 50 and Kyle's onside kicking, right? I'll show you, you know what. And so with that in mind here, with now added motivation and a little bit of spite, because I don't think he was forced out, but he clearly was prodded out. And I've written about this and I've said it multiple times. And if there's any story that in my 41 years in this business that I've gotten right, it's this one. And he was prodded to leave, and he basically said, all right, I'll go. And maybe he didn't quite say it, but I'll show you. And then he lands the Michigan job 2 weeks later. Is this the ultimate middle finger or what?
Oh, for sure. Now, my question is, with the possibility of him getting prodded out, was there a buyout, do you think, that was part of this too, to make it to where there was a clean break so that he could pursue this?
Well, I mean, working at a public institution, we can find that out. I think the job offer was there on the table that he could take unless he gets another job. Now that he's got another job, I would assume, underline the word assume, that it is a clean break, and he'll go and he'll make at least at minimum what he was making at Utah, maybe even $1 million or $2 million more. I don't know how much that's going to change in his life. As far as the quality of life. But yeah, I think the money will be there. And I think the fact that it ended the way it did, that's what's motivating him to take this job, because he had told me on multiple occasions he would not be coaching in 28 for sure. I want to ask him, who did they sign up with? Was it Arkansas, where they had a home and home or something? And I forget who it was. I know they got Vegas year after next.
Yeah, for Miami.
Miami in Vegas. But they also had an SEC school. And I said to him, well, what are you going to be doing then? He said, sure, I ain't going to be coaching. And I said, what are you going to be doing? He says, I'm going to be golfing in Hawaii. And I said, with who? And he said, with you, pointing to me. And I gave him a kiss. I said, yeah, that's what I want to hear. So this thing's actually going to screw up my golfing in Hawaii by him taking it. But more power to him, man. If you only got a finite time left, and the older you get, the time gets shorter. And this is something that you really want to do. And maybe there's some other issues there that I alluded to that I don't want to get into, that he's able to do this. So go on, go have it and see what we can do.
It'll be an interesting.
Scotty's talking to his buddy right there in the car. Isn't he?
Well, I would assume that when those minutes become available, I feel like of those board meetings, that's going to be quite the read. We put in that grammar request immediately. PK, so that we can get those meeting minutes, because it's going to be pretty fascinating to see how this thing goes down. Yeah, Scotty's luckily he's got somebody else driving around for him. It's good.
I don't like that grin that he has. I can't hear what he's saying, but I don't like that grin.
Wait, Scotty's got a chauffeur?
He does. He has a driver.
Yeah.
He's got a driver. You know how they pull out all the stops in these Arizona Bowls, man.
Yeah, look at that.
So Scotty,
the only thing I wish is that Snoop Dogg himself was driving.
I forgot.
Although
it's the Snoop on the Stoop Bowl, right?
Yeah, although there might be a contact high issue there, but
yeah.
I need a picture with you and Snoop, Scotty. This needs to happen, please.
I'm dying to make it happen. I will do everything I can, Lloyd, to make that happen.
I feel like they have to make it happen. They're like, look, we got to show up for the media guys. If they don't give you 4 minutes with Snoop in the booth tonight.
I know, right?
Can you have Snoop call me like Donald Penn style?
That might be the same kind of language that Donald Penn used with you, too.
I know.
Oh, is this the well, the bottom line is, if we can get Snoop on and get his thoughts on Whit to Michigan, I think we'd round out the day perfectly on this one.
Yeah.
Scotty, as the mess kind of gets thrown around here, there's obviously the details that have to come out, and we have to figure those things out. I think the University of Utah is going to come under quite a bit of criticism as PK is kind of referring to. I think that it's somewhere along the way, and I was chatting with a family member today who's in those conversations, in those rooms with the people that are in those boardrooms, and they're like, we screwed this up. That's the thought. Did Utah screw this one up then?
Well, so I tweeted this out earlier today, because whether it's BYU, Utah fans, they're going to die for their institution. So they will say nobody did anything wrong. Guess what? Two things can be true here. Number one, Morgan Scalley can and probably will be a great head coach, and will be a head coach at the University of Utah, win a whole lot of games for decades to come. That can be true. You know what else can be true? Utah did Kyle Whittingham a little dirty. And I agree with PK.
We lose Scotty here for a second? Well, we might have just dropped him a little bit, but I think it makes sense. I mean, if there's a mess.
Time for you to kind of look for other opportunities, not maybe like that per se, but essentially encouraged to say, you know what, golfing would be good.
Yeah, but I wonder if there's also the idea too, where
wherever your grandkids are, go see them. And so it's okay to say, yeah, you know what, Utah may have screwed this up, and I think Utah did screw this up. Kyle Whittingham was not ready to shut it down. He just wasn't. And so if he had gas left in the tank, he should be at Utah, but he's not. And now he's going to essentially finish out his career at Michigan, and he's going to win a lot of games. He's going to make a lot of money and cement his institution. And then, you know what, Utah, you hope the pressure is on Morgan Scalley in a big, big way. And I love Morgan. Morgan's a great dude. But, boy, that pressure just got ratcheted up tenfold, because if Kyle wins a college football playoff at Michigan and Utah struggles even for just a second, holy smokes. Yeah, it's going to be Armageddon.
Yeah, and then you're going to see the back and forth. The criticism will keep piling on at some point about how, this thing got botched from the beginning or whatever it might be. But you're right, and PK brought it up too about the idea of if Kyle finds a grudge somewhere, he'll run with it, because that just motivates him even more. And if there was any kind of misgiving on how this thing went down, you'll see it play out, and that would also be the way that you could see Kyle Whittingham jump into this job and say, hey, I've still got it, and I'm going to show you I still got it. Obviously, with Patrick Kinahan, of course, you can go read his story up online at KSL.com. It's up right now about this very subject of Kyle Whittingham and the possibility of him going to the University of Michigan. It looks like we may get something as early as this afternoon to be able to be official. Obviously, Kyle can't keep this one in his timeline. He can't just say, well, I'll do a press conference whenever I want. Michigan will want to roll this thing out as soon as possible to be able to get down the road onto a clean future here. Scotty G, Patrick Kinahan, we're gonna take a break, guys. We'll keep in contact here, and if something goes down officially, we'll dip back in again. But we appreciate you guys getting on the horn here and chatting with us right here at the top as we get this thing going.
Keep your phones by you.
You got it.
There you go. I know we're anticipating Hans Olsen also here at the top of the hour. Also remotely, because you know what? We're not anything except for just a worldwide sports organization. We will cover you wherever we're at here. We'll get you going. We'll take the break here. We've got more to go right around the corner. It's the KSL Sports Zone. We'll talk more Kyle Whittingham and the possibility of heading to the University of Michigan, what the fallout could mean, not just for the U, not just for Michigan, but maybe even some other programs right around here. Stay here, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
I'm a free agent. I'm in the transfer portal. So yeah, it's a different feel. But like I said, I'm at peace, and I did not want to be that guy that overstayed his welcome. And people just saying, hey, when's this guy going to leave? That was not my intention ever, and I hope I didn't do that. I'm sure with some people I did do that, but to me the timing was right.
I don't know what we were thinking to think that guy would retire ever if he's got a coaching drop left in that body. And just based off of those comments now that you heard from Kyle Whittingham from this last week at his first press availability after it was made known that he was stepping down and Morgan Scalley was officially going to be the head coach of the University of Utah. Well, now the dominoes falling in a very different direction toward Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the top name coming out of the coaching search looks to be Kyle Whittingham. Not just looks to be Kyle Whittingham. We might expect if there is something that goes down, it will likely happen this afternoon. Got to remember, too, Michigan's on Eastern time, and so everything kind of gets pushed a little bit further. If we're going to get that Friday afternoon news dump, they're going to want to do it as big as they can do it so that they can see where that image can get turned around as soon as it can. Michigan is an absolute mess. Kyle Whittingham is the opposite of somebody who is a mess. He will bring in some discipline to the program, at the very least, an image of a program that's turning around and cleaning itself up, and that could be happening as soon as today. How does that affect the rest of the offensive coordinating position here with Jason Beck, who his name has already been floated out there as the likely top name to be considered after just 1 year at the University of Utah? Then you think about the players that could possibly go with him. Where does Bryce Underwood work in all this, the five-star recruit quarterback at the University of Michigan, and what does that look like future-wise? Alex Kirry here, Lloyd Cole here with me in studio. Alex Neplis hitting the buttons, and
live from the Phoenix Rising ride. I think he's actually on the ride right now.
I think that's about as good as it gets if you can get the play-by-play going from the Busch Gardens down there in Florida. Hans Olsen joining us on the program. Hans, none of this is a total surprise because we've all worked in sports for a long time, and yet at the same time, this is as big a news as you can get here. When you saw that this could officially be going through, what were your thoughts?
I'd like to thank Kyle Whittingham for making that decision and this news today while I'm at Busch Gardens with my family.
I love
and
it.
Stepped away. I've been on the phone for the last couple hours just trying to get any info, any details on what's happening. But
are you on Falcons Fury? Hans, are you on Falcons Fury right now?
No. I'm getting on the Iron Gwaza, and the Iron Gwaza is one of the highest free falls in the entire country. It's a 91-degree fall, and it's supposed to spill your guts out. So it's supposed to be a nice ride. But I'm actually just here with my girls, and I got my 3 girls, and I got Amanda out here, and we're just having a blast. But a lot of thoughts on it, Alex. You know, I could sit here and stomp my feet and say that this should have never happened, and if Kyle wants to coach in Utah, he should coach in Utah. But at this point, I just kind of want to move on from it and just say, okay, now what? And the now what is not something that I like to face because I have loved doing sports radio in this state because I've loved to get to know these coaches and I'm familiar with them. And I know what I can get away with and what I can't get away with. And it's just going to be hard to lose any of them out of the state or see some shift or see some move. It's just going to be a pain because, you know, you get so used to these guys and we're all going to have to make a pretty major adjustment at this point.
It's not just a huge piece of news, but it's also, I mean, we have people who are like, yeah, you know what? He can move on to Michigan then. Tell me what the Utes are going to be like going forward. How on earth does Utah recover from not just the idea of, I mean, because Morgan Scalley, we knew he was going to be the head coach, and we knew what we get with Morgan Scalley. But this could be a different level of scorched earth when you talk about things that are left behind and pieces that may end up leaving the state, not just from Utah, but maybe even locally. What happens with the University of Utah then in the short term future here, and then maybe long term after something like this happens, the way that it went down?
Let's look at a few things. I just sent a tweet out and I said, this looks like it's going to be the biggest shift in coaching in Utah history, in the state of Utah history. And people look at it and be like, oh, no, not in the history, in my history, 20 years that I've been on air. People look at it and be like, well, Bronco Mendenhall left and you brought in Kalani Sasaki. And there were a lot of things that stopped major dominoes. When Bronco left and Kalani came in, like there were already some hires with guys that weren't coaching, like Cy Detmer and Reno Mahe, and BYU was trying to save some money, and they were trying to make in-house decisions. And this one, I think, is going to have some dominoes that may have an effect across the state just based off of who Kyle Whittingham's attached to. And by the way, anybody that's listening, like, our Hans has inside sources, or Hans has talked to anybody. No, I really haven't. I've tried. I've been trying to get some information on it, but in typical Kyle Whittingham staff status, they don't answer, they don't take calls, they don't talk, and so it's really hard to get to things. So, okay, if they don't want to talk, then let's assume. Let's start assuming. Well, we all know that Jay Hill is very close to Kyle Whittingham, and we know Michigan pays well. So everybody sees the rumors out there, they see the buzz, they see the stir. Well, yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to make that connection and say, well, Michigan could pay more than anybody. Jay loves Kyle. Kyle wants to go win a national championship, believes he's got the talent there, and if he doesn't have the talent, he's got the cachet and NIL that he can get it. So why wouldn't he say to Jay Hill, hey, let's go? No, it's up to Jay. And I'm not saying Jay would leave, and I'm not saying BYU wouldn't try to match or try to get to a big number. All I'm saying is make the connection. It's easy to make that connection. It's very easy to see. So I would assume he's talked to Jay Hill, and I would assume that he's talked to Jason Beck, because Jason Beck showed up and they had some pretty incredible success. And I think it would be an easy phone call to make. Okay, so let's talk about a few things here, guys. So let's just say that he pulls Jay Hill with him. Okay, well, who does Kalani know? Now Kalani is calling Colton Swan, or he's calling Lewis Powell. Okay, well, let's say Jason Beck leaves. Well, who's Morgan Scalley going to call? If I'm Morgan, I'm calling Aaron Roderick. I'm calling anybody that I have coached with, that I trust, that I know, that can come in and build me an offense that I can be successful with. So just understand that when I say that this is going to be maybe one of the craziest coaching changes we've seen, I'm just trying to draw some parallels here and make the connections of who knows who and what could possibly be done. And people could say, oh, wait a second, BYU can't poach a Utah coach. Well, that was back in the day when Kalani Sasaki took the job as an independent head coach, and Utah was a couple of years into the Pac-12 and had built up this pool of money, and it was hard. Utah was poaching BYU coaches, and it was hard to even pull a Utah coach because of the stability and the money. And right now, we're looking at it, and it's like success is everywhere and money is everywhere. So everybody should be calling everybody. That's just how it should be. And by the way, like, I've already got Utah fans that are upset on Twitter, and I've got BYU fans that are upset on Twitter. I understand why you're upset. Like, I'm not happy about it either. I'm not happy that I could possibly lose some of these coaches out of this state. I'm not happy that Kyle Whittingham's leaving. That sucks for me. Kyle has been a close friend of mine. a very close friend of mine. So, okay, now let's talk about some of this coaching talent. Who would I contact first? If I'm Kyle Whittingham, outside of Jason Beck and Jay Hill, who I think I would go for my offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, the third guy I would call is Lewis Powell. I'm calling a D-line coach that has I was trying to put numbers together. I'm going back to Bradley and I'm going through like Lecky Fotu, and I'm going through Hunter Dimmick, and I've got a grip of guys under Lewis Powell. I think I got to about 235 sacks, guys. I've got 5 All-Americans. I've got about 235 sacks. I've got a recruiting extraordinaire, and he's my go-to guy. I called Lewis Powell and I say, hey, we're going to Michigan. Now, here's the other thing. If I'm Utah, if I'm Morgan Scally, I'm on the phone with Lewis right now. And I'm saying, Lewis, okay, fine, take Michigan's best offer, but you give me final say. We've been together a lot of years. I'm younger. I'm going to be here a lot more years. You get to stay in the state. You get to stay where people love you. You get to stay where you're really grounded in recruiting, and we'll get to that number, and we'll keep you safe. Morgan has got to be on the phone with administration and Lewis Powell. Lewis Powell is a bloodline that Utah cannot lose, and he's one that I would go after first. Okay, second. And again, outside of Jason Beck and Jay Hill, those are my coordinators that I would try to take with me. Second, I would go after Jim Harding. Think about it. Jim Harding's about to have his 2 offensive tackles drafted.
Yep. Both
a first-round pick probably from Spencer Fano and probably a second or third round pick from Lomu. So think about this. Now let's go all the way back to Jeremiah Patasi. We got Jeremiah Patasi, and then we got everything in between. And by the way, I know these numbers because when Jim Harding was recruiting my son Ross, we were going through the numbers. I think he's got 11 draft picks after these 2 guys go. I think he's got 11 or 12 draft picks. And by the way, there's a couple of others that are draftable on this offensive line. I think that Mokofisi and others have draft potential on this offensive line. I even think Jaron Kump, what he did with the center position this year, makes him draftable. I want to say that he had a year. It was like he had a year where he had 4 guys drafted off offensive line. And I saw the way he recruits. I saw the way he recruited my son. And by the way, it was a phenomenal recruiting process. And what it ultimately came down to was, here's the bottom line. You're not going to be able to get on the field for a long time. So we just can't fit you here. Like it won't work. That was his honesty to my son. It was, you better work your butt off. You've got to get your feet faster. You've got to get your hands faster. You've got to make sure that you kick step. Like he gave him all the details. I'll always respect him for that. Always pure honesty, and all I want is to see my son grow, and he got a nice dose of reality, and I love that. I'm telling you right now, Jim Harding is a perfect recruiter. He was constantly calling. He was, constantly taking calls, whatever we needed, he was there. So I called Jim. By the way, I'm giving you a lot of my personal. This is my personal, but it's also steeped in reality, and it's steeped in numbers. Look at his draft pool. Look at his recruiting. Look at the guys he's selected. Look at the way he's developed these guys. And you have a very good understanding of why I would go after Jim Harding. Okay, so if I get Lewis Powell and Jim Harding, all right, well, what does that do across the board? What defensive coaches can I try to get from BYU? Or if I lose a BYU coach, what coaches can I get from Utah? And do I need to go into Logan and start looking at some of Bronco staff if I've got to fill my coaching staff? So I think that it could be a massive shift. And the hardest thing for me, boys, is I have grown to love and respect these coaches. People always say, well, you're a homer for BYU, or you're a turncoat for Utah, or you're this or that. Here's what I am. I'm a people person. I love the people that I love. I respect the people that I love. I respect people that can coach football, that play good football. I respect people that build programs and get wins. That's Kyle Whittingham. That's Kalani Sasaki. Mm-hmm. That's Jason Beck. That's Jay Hill. That's Aaron Roderick. That's everything in between. There's a lot of great coaches that have done a lot of great winning in this state. And I'm just worried, Utah let Kyle Whittingham go. Mm-hmm. Think about, if you're Michigan, why wouldn't you hire Kyle? I don't have a major buyout. What do you mean? I don't have a buyout? I don't have to pay $8.5 million to Utah to even get a chance to talk to Kyle. Like, you think about what this hire was for Michigan. It was the perfect hire, and I can understand why they went with it. But boys, I think we're going to suffer the consequence because think about it from Kyle's perspective. Look, if ESPN called and they were like, Hans, you got to come out. We got this spot for you, and we got money, and we want you to bring your staff, and we want you to bring everything you can. Well, okay. I'm looking at Bonneville and KSL. I'm like, I've got this massive offer. Cool. Well, we can't match it. Okay, well, what are we going to do here? Because if I walk away and I go to ESPN and they're telling me I can take my talent, then I'm going to take my talent. Well, I become the most hated man on earth, but I'm trying to do good radio. Well, that's what Kyle Whittingham is doing. And this is the other difference, because I've seen a lot of people mention, well, but Michigan's not just going to give him carte blanche. Michigan for sure is going to. No, Michigan became a train wreck, and this whole scandal has embarrassed a lot of people. And when you hire Kyle Whittingham, you hire his culture. You hire him to bring his culture. By bringing his culture, he brings his guys.
Yep.
So he's bringing his staff. Now, if I'm Michigan and I hire Jay Hill, and I bring in Jay Hill, then I'm like, oh, by the way, Jay, you're going to be keeping these four assistants because the players are going to be leaving with them if we don't keep them. So you're going to figure out a way to incorporate these guys, and you can bring in 3 other assistants. That's not what you do with Kyle Whittingham. You're hiring Kyle because you're trying to restore culture. The way you restore Kyle's culture is you let Kyle hire culture guys. And by the way, Kyle's not going in there to be embarrassed. Kyle is going to go in there, and he's got about 4 or 5 years that he wants to win a national championship. So he's going to go in there scorched earth. He's going to take the best of the best, whatever he can grab, whatever will go with him, whatever Utah or BYU or Utah State or any other university that's trying to retain staff will hold on to. And he's going to try to bring that crew.
Yeah. Well, and not only that, like, I mean, they're saying, hey, can you bring in the cleanest possible dudes ever? He's like, say less. That's the only people that I hire. What was interesting is our producer, Alex Napolis, who's helping us out today, just sent us this tweet. This guy, I'm not even sure who he is. I don't know him from Adam, but he said this. He goes, just to be safe, I checked Whittingham's Instagram. The only women he follows is his wife and daughters and hasn't posted in 10 years. Multiple championships in Michigan confirmed is what the tweet said. But that's exactly what they're looking for. That's exactly what they're looking for. Some stability, but not just that. He doesn't bring in guys, to your point. He doesn't bring in guys that don't fit this exact culture. And so it's beyond reproach dudes who he's gonna hire. It's guys who they're able to talk about football and culture and get it done from day one. And that's going to be his requisite, too. Like, hey, I want to do this, but I'm going to clean it up my way. And by the way, it's not about cleaning it up. I start clean. So starting clean is the way that I think that he's going to go through with it. And, yeah, the unfortunate thing is going to be the fallout. I think that we're going to – you could see the level of football success in the state of Utah take a massive dip, not just at the University of Utah, but across the board because of the fallout that could happen today.
By the way, Hans, we're
worried about it.
We're close with all these guys, and I should say we have good relationships with all these guys. We know, I mean, Morgan. I mean, he was we talked. It wasn't that long ago. Well, it was a long time ago when he hosted a radio show right here on the Zone. Like, we know all these guys really well. They're all interconnected with BYU, Utah, like. So, and it wasn't, we've been talking about Kyle Whittingham and having a statue at Utah. You talk about, I wonder what happens now. Obviously, hey, I don't care what anybody says. He was not ready to go. He was not. He said that in his availability. He says, he didn't want to overstay his welcome. But yeah, I'm not, I got still some left in the tank. Well, if he leaves and he takes some guys from BYU, some guys from Utah, what does that mean for Kyle Whittingham's legacy in the state of Utah?
So, Lloyd, I would say that the answer to that is as deep as so many other things in regards to Kyle Whittingham even leaving and all those things that happen along with that. Like his legacy, this is all going to go extremely deep. Okay, so think about it. Let's say Morgan Scally goes on for a 10-year career, and let's say he gets close to a national championship. Well, what do we look back at? We say Kyle Whittingham set all that up. Okay, let's say that this puts Utah in a funk for 5 years, and they fire Morgan, and they're trying to find a different head coach. Well, now we got to look at it and say, well, how did he leave it? What were the cupboards like? And, I think that how things play out the next 10 years, does he go to Michigan? Is he embarrassed and fired in 2 years? Or does he go to Michigan and win a national championship in 4 years? If he wins a national championship, everybody's going to want to have his name attached to them. Well, this was Kyle Whittingham's breeding ground. This is where he started. This is where he got his boost. He took his staff from here. These are all homegrown guys, and the next thing you know, it's just it's a completely different conversation. So, Lloyd, I think in order to answer that, we got to let the next 10 years play out.
Yeah.
And just say, all right, where are we headed? Because if Kyle Whittingham finishes with a national championship at Michigan and Morgan Scally goes on to have the career we expect him to have, which is, great wins, good success, then I think everybody feels happy about it. And they're like, oh, man, Kyle Whittingham, what a blessing. This guy's incredible. I mean, look at Urban Meyer squatted in the state of Utah for a short period of time, and we still talk about Urban Meyer. Kyle was here for 21 years. He was here for 21 years. There's people that are still wanting to put a statue of Urban at the University of Utah because of what they did in 2004. Look, as long as I'm on air, as long as I'm a part of this media, I'm going to ensure that Kyle Whittingham's name and his memory and his legacy stays intact and exactly where it should be. An amazing head coach that caused very little social drama, that didn't have major scandals, that hired good men. And yeah, okay, BYU fans, you can hate him all you want. And believe me, when he was piping BYU 9 times in a row, 10 or 11 years consecutively, yeah, it was a little bit tiresome. I'm sure BYU fans were like, this sucks. I hate this guy. He won't shake hands. He hates BYU. He hates everything blue. He calls him the team down south. I get it. BYU fans, you can hate him all you want. And I totally understand it. I'm just telling you, he coaches the way I coach. He's the type of coach I'd play football for. So as long as I'm here, I'm going to do everything I can to keep his legacy intact because he earned it and he deserved it. And at some point, regardless, I do think that his name's got to be on the stadium or he's got to have some type of statue recognition in that school.
Hands, I'm pretty much telling everybody this. Keep your phone handy. Keep your phone handy. Go. We appreciate you. Go enjoy some time with the family. Hope hope your Christmas was well and appreciate all you do. But keep your phone handy.
Okay. Everything okay?
Yeah, we're just working through all this, man. It's just all this.
If more happens, keep your phone handy because I'm going to be calling you.
Well, Hans, we appreciate it because we're asking everybody to basically take some time away from their family on a day that we were all assuming maybe we'd have off. But you're a pro. You always do it, so we appreciate it, man.
No. I mean, like literally, I'm getting on this ride, this roller coaster ride. I'll stay off of it and I'll do whatever I got to do. I hope the sports fans in the state understand how much we care. I hope they know. Like, I'm here with my 3 girls. Say hi. Hey, all you girls say hi. Say hi.
Oh, hi.
Say hi, Max.
I love it.
Hi.
I love it.
That's
So
what we do.
we're all sitting here. They're all sitting here looking at me like, Dad, so this is what we're doing. Here's the deal, dude. I don't care. I love this state. I love sports radio. And I will do everything I need to do. And I'm just hoping that this works out okay for BYU. It works out okay for Utah because we know this. It's going to work out good for Kyle Whittingham. It's just who he is, and Michigan is going to push around who they need to push around. So there you go, boys.
Appreciate it, Hans. And I think we might have to have a first. We could have you live on a ride, and that might be when we do. That might be the next version of being able to get you on. But we appreciate it, man.
Well, listen, I'm on next, so if you want, I'll stay on, and you can hear me write it. But I'll probably call you after.
All right, Hans, appreciate it, man. We'll chat with you again later. Hans Olsen.
This is
Scotty G and Hans and Scotty, of course, every day noon to 3 usually.
This is going to be the biggest storyline that I think we've seen. I'm trying to think of anything that's up there. In my time, there's been some big ones, but this is the ripple effect in this. And by the way, we're going to be checking in with David James here coming up here momentarily.
I think the one that matches. I mean, it's a weird game to play where we go, but for us, it's funny because we talk about the things that like took us out of moments, and we had to live in that space, and it just broke all the things here locally. I think the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert stuff, like with the trades, that ended up kind of blowing that whole thing up. And that was a good month and a half. But those things were slow burnish. We sort of saw them coming. How wild is it to think? I was just thinking about this because we were talking about the Urban Meyer deal. Urban Meyer goes and ends up at Ohio State, not directly after he left Utah, but eventually ends up at Ohio State, wins national championships there. Whit leaves the University of Utah, goes to Michigan, wins national championships there? ? Like, what a wild! You talk about a pipeline.
I didn't even think because of the mess that it is, and I know we've talked about it. Like that he's the perfect guy to go in there and clean up shop. But I still thought he did not want to retire. Now he did not want to. He wanted to keep going, but he was close enough that it's like, well, do I really want this headache? Do I really want to deal with this Michigan thing? Do I really, and the fact that that's even a possibility tells me he has at least 3 to 5 more years in the tank.
I think that 2015 college football, he couldn't do it because there would be a massive stupidity that he'd have to wade through that's not his fault. No coach wants to inherit that. And especially a coach that you feel like is going to be shorter time than, you hire a guy in his early 50s or in his, in college football now, it's like hire a guy in his late 30s and they become the guy. But you don't have that time now. So he had to look at it and go, will I be able to make this happen now? Are they going to make us sit out of the college football playoff for the garbage that has come out of the University of Michigan? The rules that just continue to be broken. It didn't take Biff Poggi telling us that this was an absolute disaster, or whatever the terminology was that he used. It was like an organizational, failing. It didn't take him telling us that to understand it. We knew already. And the University of Michigan, in spite of itself, still was able to have success in the midst of coaches having affairs with staffers, coaches cheating, coaches stealing, like federal crimes, federal computer crimes happening that we found out this last week was actually during their run up to the national championship when they lost to TCU that year in 2022. That was happening in the midst of all this. Now, do I think that Kyle Whittingham that it's going to be an easy go, that they immediately start winning? I don't think that's the case. I think you're going to have to deal with some mess for a minute. I don't think it's going to have to be sanctions. I don't think it's going to have to be telling the school, oh, hey, look, because Whit doesn't want to go to a place and be told you can't go anything of significance over the next few years. I think you're right. I mean, I would love to try to guess on how many years Kyle Whittingham has now, but I will never guess again on what Kyle Whittingham is going to do in the future. Like, we got it freaking wrong. We guessed for Kyle Whittingham and said, he'll be done. This is it. He's walking away. You know what the big mistake was that we made too? That he walked away and everything was happiness and rainbows at the University of Utah with those two. I guarantee it wasn't. I guarantee that there were, and Whit would never have those hard feelings against any, like Morgan Scalley, any of those. He said too, he goes, I'm not going to be that guy that you're going to make look like the dude who wasn't walking away or who couldn't give it up. No, don't make me out to be that guy. Don't make me out to be that guy. In fact, I'll show you.
All these things are pointed towards somebody, by the way, up there. All those things that he's saying.
I think that we're going to find out. And again, the good news is we're going to find out some of this. Was there a buyout to cut ties with Kyle Whittingham? I think we're going to find out that the answer is yes. Was there a single or a bunch of people on that board that said, hey, let's do it this way. We got to move on. We got to make this thing happen. We got to do it right now. That made it to where this thing went down the way that it did? because you're going to get a lot of people who are looked at funny up at the U, I think, after all this, because they're going to go, did you guys really botch this? And the fans are not going to be happy. The fans are not going to be happy because the board wanted things to go according to their timeline, or a handful of people. I don't know who. So we'll see how it happens.
They win, they're happy. There's no problem.
Yeah, there shouldn't be.
They have to win.
But
if they don't, there's going to be a little bit. There's going to be some grumpiness.
How do you win at the rate that Whit did? 18 seasons of winning records out of 21, 7+ 10-win seasons, 2 Pac-12 championships, Coach of the Year honors, AP Coach of the Year in 2008, Pac-12 Coach of the Year 21 and 22. The guy is already a legend. He's already in the Hall of Fame, not just at the University of Utah, but college football. He will be in that College Football Hall of Fame just based off of this. And it'll take some years of trying to get back to – it'll have to be when he's totally done at Michigan. It'll have to be when everything kind of – the dust settles here. I do think that the legacy of Kyle Whittingham will be set. There's not going to be hard feelings there eventually, but I think in the short term, it's going to be awkward for a while. It's going to be really weird for a minute. And I think every program in the state is gonna see some big-time changes. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, David James is going to join us. We're going to get some thoughts from DJ, who, of course, has been covering Kyle Whittingham, not just during the head coaching times at the University of Utah, but also the almost 40 years that he's been at this institution. We've got more to go around the corner. Stay right here with us as we break the news. We're waiting for an official word. The reports all pointing toward University of Utah former head coach Kyle Whittingham becoming the next head coach at the University of Michigan after Sharon Moore was dismissed and after that program has gone through an absolute disaster of the last 3 or 4 years. We'll take that break. Lloyd Cole joining me. We've got Alex Napolis hitting the buttons. We've come in here to chat about all this today. Let's get this thing going. More to go around the corner. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Well, like I said, I don't want to overstay my welcome. Somebody once told me that every year that goes by you're a coach, 10% of the fan base starts to hate you. And so after 20 years, they all, plus their kids and grandkids, probably hate me. So anyway, but it was a good run. It was a good run. And I'll say it one more time. I didn't want to be that hanger-oner that just people just got sick of.
Well, it's certainly not going to be a hanger-oner here at the University of Utah. Kyle Whittingham. We don't know how close to a deal that this could be, but it according to a lot of sources, people are saying this is almost a done deal. We may see an announcement as soon as today. If you're Michigan, you want to make an announcement of a clean living coach into the future as soon as you can. The faster that you can get that whole staff out of that building and divorce yourself from any of those feelings and any of the actions and any of the things that went on with that University of Michigan team over the past 5 years, you get away from it as soon as you can. The way you do it is with guys like Kyle Whittingham, who are reportedly going to be taking that job at the University of Michigan. We'll see if that actually goes down because, look, like you said, I was saying it earlier, when Kyle Whittingham, when we zig, Kyle Whittingham zags, we have no idea what goes on in the head of that man. But I do think that if we do know anything, it's that he's a massive competitor. He has a hard time walking away from a job like that. He has a hard time walking away from coaching. Alex Kirry, by the way, Lloyd Cole, Alex Napolis here in studio. We jumped into the studio live today just over an hour and a half ago, and we started going at this thing and trying to figure it out. One of the people helping us figure all those things out, somebody with tremendous perspective on this, somebody who's covered Kyle Whittingham way into the past before he was even a head coach at the University of Utah. David James, DJ, joining us on the program. What's going on, DJ? What are your thoughts this morning as we thought we were going to have a nice day off and just hanging out? It's never like that in the world of sports. You got to be ready all the time for something like this. But how shocked were you to see that his name is tied very hardcore to the University of Michigan now?
Well, not shocked. If you go back on my Twitter feed, you'll see on December 15th, we ran a poll question. What should Kyle do now? We knew he was out at Utah, that he was stepping down. And, there was, go do something in the NFL and ski or golf and be a grandpa. And the fourth option in the four-choice Twitter poll was be a Michigan man. And the poll got over 550 votes, and about a third of them were for Kyle being a Michigan man. And so this has been on the radar. The only question is, he's 66, in my mind, the only question was he's 66 years old. That's not the ideal candidate. Historically, you'd like to hire someone who could be at school, 10 years or whatever. And that seems pretty optimistic for a 66-year-old. But everything in college football has sped up. And I was pretty sure he wouldn't be at the top of their list. But when I started thinking about who they could hire, I couldn't really figure out how he couldn't be at least top 5.
Right.
And 2 of them were clearly off the list because Alabama and Arizona State are holding on to their guys, right? DeBoer and
Dillingham.
And now I'm blanking on an ASU coach's name.
Yeah, Kenny Dillingham, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to say Willingham. I knew I was going to do it. I was trying to avoid running their 2 names together. So with those 2 guys locked up, and I can see how they'd be great candidates, no doubt about it. So I'm thinking, okay, is he 3rd, 4th, or 5th on the list? How long before they get to him? He can't be that far down the list. He just went 10-2. He can't be that far down. In the last 5 years, he's won 2 conference titles and been to 2 Rose Bowls and had a 10-2 team on top of that. He can't be that far down the list. And so now it looks like he was 3rd on the list. Maybe there was somebody else who said no and it was quiet, so maybe he was 4th. But it doesn't really matter if you're the one who gets the job. And I do think it's close because if he didn't want it, he knows – I mean, there's been way too much out there now. I mean, the national media is all over it, right? It's clearly leaking on Michigan's end. And if he doesn't want it, he could just say no and they could be on to the next thing and that story would be out. So he wants it. And from Michigan's perspective, they got to quit messing around and get a coach. We're getting pretty close to January 1st, and the portal's going to open on January 2nd. And if they don't have a coach, they could have their team rated. They just went 9-3. Now they went 9-3 against a soft schedule. And let me say, I've already looked at next year's schedule, and it's harder. I think they played 2 playoff teams this year. They play 4 teams next year that are in the playoff this year. And teams do go up and down year to year, but they got Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, and a non-conference game with Oklahoma. So they got a real tough schedule next year. They better not mess around with this roster. So Michigan, and this is Captain Obvious stuff, Michigan's got to get it done.
Yeah.
And if Kyle doesn't want it to happen, he could just say no and they can move on. So these reports have to be legit, and it's got to be close.
How okay, now the question becomes, DJ, is obviously our interest is all with Utah and BYU. We know Kyle Whittingham is extremely close with coaches on both staffs.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the ripple effect this could have on Utah and BYU if this does happen.
Texting with people who know Kyle today, the word domino has been used so many times by so many people because, I guess, I just said it's got to be close, right? It could still fall apart. But I don't really think anybody I know believes it's going to. But, you just said it, Alex. We don't really know what's in his mind, right? But It does seem like, man, I'm thinking this got to be 80 or 90% of the way there. This has to almost be in the barn. It's got to be close. So that means he's got to have a staff. Mm-hmm. So I would think candidate number 1 on the offensive side of the ball has got to be Jason Beck.
Yep.
Because they average 41 points a game, and they're 5th in the nation in scoring.
And they got to keep Underwood there at Michigan, and that's a great way to do it.
Hold on to that thought for just a second, Alex. The 41 points and the 5th in the nation is great because it's running, and that trend. I've had people text me this today. Hey, his offense is going to translate to Big Ten football in November. Whether you're home or on the road, there's a decent chance you're playing in really cold weather. I mean, you could be at USC or UCLA, but there's a decent chance you're playing in really cold weather. Right now, I'm talking to you from the shores of the Chesapeake Bay because I got family in Baltimore. And we're down in Annapolis right now. And, I wouldn't want to throw the ball in the weather today. I'm just trying not to drop my freaking phone in the water right now talking to you. It's cold. And they're having mild weather, right? So he's got an offense. Now, Kyle's hard to work for. Let's just say it. If you're an offensive coordinator for Kyle Whittingham, that's not an easy job. And I bet if we had truth serum, I could get 3 offensive coordinators to say that very quickly, and I might not even need truth serum with 1 or 2 of them.
Yep.
And I have had someone point that out to me, that Beck's not a lot because he's not easy to work for. And I'm like, Michigan has more prestige and more money, and now they've got a year of trust built, to which the response was, yeah, it's probably Beck. So there's that. And Jay Hill on the defensive side, I think, would be Kyle's first pick. Jay Hill played for Kyle when Kyle was a defensive coordinator. He coached under him before he went to Weber State. Jay has, wherever he's gone, the program's gotten better. At some point, it's not an accident. At some point, it's Jay. And I think it was Jay a while ago, but even if you're slower to the party than me, I think by now you're saying, yeah, Jay's good. So I think that's the guy. Now, Jay brought a bunch of transfers from Weber State. So if it is Jay, if I were BYU fans, I'd be worried about some of the defensive players who love Jay going to Michigan.
Yep.
Now, Michigan's got a pretty good roster. They're 9-3, and they're supposed to have a good recruiting class. So it's not like they got to rebuild everything. But inevitably, they're going to lose some people. If nothing else, in this NIL era, one of the other reasons they got to get this done is Kyle's got to put a staff together. Whoever gets the job has to put a staff together, has to assess all the players. Not only are you good enough, but are you good enough at what price? Because Michigan has more NIL money, but they don't have unlimited. And so you got to put a market value on every player, and you just can't pay a player twice what you should be paying. So you may have to let people go, in which case you got to have replacements. So absolutely, I'd be worried about players on both sides of the ball. I think at Utah, the first thing I would worry about is Parker at running back. He's really good. Now, I don't know Michigan's roster. They may be set at running back. I know both Utah and BYU have good young quarterbacks. Now, to your point, Alex, they do have a good quarterback. That was the report at Michigan, right? Now, if you go look at his stats, and because I'm watching local teams, I don't have time to watch a bunch of Michigan games, so it's not like I've watched him a lot. I haven't. But if you go back and look at his stats, he trended poorly in November.
Yeah.
It's like they were catching up to him. Now, again, this is why you hire a coach and an OC to watch film and think, hey, yeah, it didn't go well in November, but we know how to fix what needs to be fixed. And there's, a basic foundation of a really good player there. And they may decide that. And because Bryce Underwood's a freshman, I can see why really quarterback is the one position where there might not be a lot of plundering. I mean, heck, even, Ficklin, if he's going to go there and he's not going to start, he could be sitting behind him for a couple more years, whereas the job comes open in one more year at Utah. But some of these other positions, along the lines, at linebacker, where usually you have multiple good players on the roster, you got multiple guys on the way up, and you need depth. Yeah, I could see where, depending on NIL promises and needs, I'd be worried about losing players.
Interestingly enough, of course, you got a couple of bowl games that these teams have to play over the next couple. I say that these teams, all of them that we're talking about, Utah, Michigan, BYU, all of them that could potentially. I mean, BYU's got a game tomorrow. There's no way that all of this stuff hitting the news today is going to sit well with that program, because there is likely. I mean, they are. They are on the road right now in Florida, and they're watching this thing go down. And you can't tell me that these players, and some of them might be thinking to themselves what they look like in Michigan blue. Next week on New Year's Eve at the Vegas Bowl, I'm wondering how they're going to handle. We were just talking about it in the break. It's like, Kyle, there's no way Kyle's going to be on the sidelines for that game, though, right? Like, obviously, there'd be no version of that because you don't do it. So in the short term, it's going to be very weird. It's going to be very awkward with these programs in the immediate right now, and how the dust settles after that, and how programs deal with that. I mean, Kalani had a massive win, and BYU had a massive win last month, and that could be absolutely punch in the gut if Jay Hill leaves that program.
Yes, I would say yes to all of that. That's what bowl games are these days, and it is cutthroat, and you have to keep your guys, and people with more prestige and more money are going to come for your guys. When Chris Hill was the athletic director a lifetime ago, when all the rules were different, he said he always tried to keep a list of 5 coaches for each of his key jobs, because he said there's only 2 options. Your coach isn't good, it's going poorly, and you're going to have to make a change and get somebody better, or it's going well and somebody with more money and more prestige is going to hire your coach away. And then you better have somebody ready. So you better always be ready. So while yes to everything you just said, it's like the line from The Godfather. This is the business we chose,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how the business works now. And you got to always be on your guard. People always want your people, and maybe they'll be able to fight and keep some of their people. Maybe they won't. And these are always so personal. And I will say this: for all these decisions, you never know what's going on in somebody's life.
That's true.
You never know personally what's going on. We don't all air everything. So people can make decisions for lots of reasons. But certainly we know some of the factors, right? Money is going to be a factor. Michigan's going to have more of it. However, BYU's got pretty deep pockets if they value somebody. But Michigan's got prestige. You have a legit chance to win a national championship at Michigan. Sure, the schedule's tough, and you're playing 4 playoff teams. But you got resources, and you have the ability to get in as a large. Right now, Big 12's never had anyone get in as a large. So if anyone wants to go to Michigan, as much as I want to say there's a Power 4, down not very deep. I think most of us know it's a power 2 and another 2 and then the group of 5. Well, 6, I guess, now with the Mountain West and Pac-12 and everything. Mm-hmm. But it'll be interesting for each one of these, and which player goes and which player stays. One of the things about being a good coach that Kyle was good at doing was identifying good young coaches. So you don't get to hold on to people forever. At some point, this is going to be an opportunity for another good young coach whether it's Kyle at Michigan or whether it's Morgan at Utah or whether it's Kalani at BYU or anybody else when the dominoes start falling. Are you good at identifying good young coaches? At one point, nobody knew who Jay Hill was. At one point, nobody knew who Kalani was. At one point, nobody knew who Morgan was. I mean, I distinctly remember because Kalani went to Arizona, so he was off my radar when he started coaching. And I knew it was at Southern Utah. And I remember when he got hired at Utah, I remember thinking, that was pretty fast. I wonder how good he is. And Kyle didn't have the rep at that point. It was more, they didn't have a lot of money, and these are the coaches who, A, wanted the job, and B, they could afford, and there weren't a lot of options because they spent all their money to keep Kyle. Well, not all of it, but a lot of it. So, hey, identify good young coaches. It looks like a problem in the moment, but problems are opportunities. So, and this is why you get the big money. Kalani's getting big money. Yep. Morgan's getting big money. So identify good young coaches if you lose some. It'll suck. You can take about 30 seconds to feel sorry for yourself, and then you got to go make a good decision.
To your point about next year's schedule, by the way, the only two, that you look at on the Michigan schedule that you go, okay, well, you got those. Western Michigan and UTEP are your 2 out-of-conference home games. But you're right, Oklahoma comes to Ann Arbor on September 12th. They have in their Big Ten schedule that's now 9 teams. Obviously, they play those 9 conference games. Indiana and Iowa, Penn State. They go to Oregon, and they go to Ohio State. I mean, it's not going to be easy next year. It's not going to be easy the year after. I mean, they're going to have to play these. And okay. right off the bat, you can't tell me that Kyle Whittingham's not licking his chops when he sees that kind of stuff, though, too.
Right. I mean, is it hard? Absolutely. But, again, this is the business you chose.
Yep.
And as I said once a long time ago to a news director who was complaining, like, hey, you're the one who wanted that job. So, what you signed up for, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, well, we already know Witt's going to be compensated very, very, very well. It's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is when we find out about how it went down that he left the University of Utah, if there was a buyout involved, all those questions that could be answered at some point thanks to a grandma request. I'm sure we're going to be able to do it and figure all those things out. And then when the dust settles in 10 years, Witt is still going to be the guy with his name possibly on the field at some point. I don't think that I don't think that his legacy is going to get affected long term. It's still going to get looked at.
Now
hard feelings forever?
Segment, Alex. There could be some hard feelings here. Was he pushed out? Yeah, he didn't let him use the word retire in the press release.
Yep.
And you got to appreciate that because he's being honest with us. If he said he was retired and then he took the job, we'd all go, what? Yeah. You said you retired. But he made it super clear, and you played the bite coming back. He was clear when he talked. It's like,
let's just say he was pushed.
Yeah, I think PK said the word prodded. PK liked to use the word prodded. Yeah.
Okay, prodded. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff now about Mark Harlan, and man, this is a big part of this guy's job and a big part of this guy's legacy. But there's a lot of assumptions built into most of the posts I'm seeing right now. There are plenty of coaches who held on too long and stayed too long. There are, and if Whittingham goes to Michigan and it doesn't go great. And if Morgan identifies good young coaches, even if he loses people and it goes well, it's going to be like, well, they made the right decision at the right time. And it all played out, and we know. And if it goes great for Kyle and it goes great for Morgan, it'll be like, well, they didn't know how much longer they want to lose Morgan, and Morgan had a good run. It was still the right decision. It's like Montana moving on to Kansas City back in the day, and Steve Young won the Super Bowl. And Montana still had something in the tank, man. He took Kansas City to the AFC title game. But I get why the Niners did it. Young played more. He was younger. I get it. Now, there is the other scenario, which is what people are alluding to. Morgan struggles, and Kyle goes to Michigan and crushes it, wins a Big Ten title or a national title or both or whatever. And it's like, what were you doing? But it's all out there. We got to let the games play out. And I don't think we have to wait 10 years. We'll know a lot more in 3 to 5 for sure. Maybe we'll know a lot in 1. Who knows?
DJ, we appreciate it. Live from the shores of Chesapeake Bay. David James reporting. We appreciate it. There you go. DJ, of course, we've already had PK. We've already had DJ on. We've already had Scotty and Hans. We're anticipating Jeremiah Jensen at some point coming on here. We're going to have our Ute insider, Steve Bartle, join us as well. We'll reach out, try to get as many of these names in the hopper as possible, and the possibility of University of Utah former head coach Kyle Whittingham. And as ESPN put it, Utah legend Kyle Whittingham considering that job at Michigan, and it looks like it's all but a done deal for at least him getting in there. Might be some details of assistance, and of course, there's the money, Lloyd, you have to consider. We've got a lot to talk about, though. We've got tons to jump into, and we'll have Jeremiah Jensen on at some point in this next hour. We're going to get Steve Bartle, like we said, and we'll get it all to you here. And if something does become official, you're going to hear it right here on the KSL Sports Zone. We'll jump out to a break. More to go, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
I'm a free agent. I'm in the transfer portal. So yeah, it's a different feel, but like I said, I'm at peace, and I did not want to be that guy that overstayed his welcome, and people just saying, hey, when's this guy going to leave? That was not my intention ever, and I hope I didn't do that. I'm sure with some people I did do that, but to me the timing was right.
All right, everybody, welcome on into a special edition of the KSL Sports Zone Live today. Across the board, we're dipping in with all of our hosts. We're dipping in with all of our staff who have anything to do with the University of Utah, and we are talking about Kyle Whittingham and the possibility of him being hired, according to many sources, all but an official done deal. It looks likely that Kyle Whittingham will be the next head football coach at the University of Michigan, after, of course, stepping down mere weeks ago. And last week, finally getting that press conference where we got to ask Kyle Whittingham about the future and what it looked like. And his idea, I mean, we should have read it. We should have read it for what it was. And none of it was that he was going to be done coaching, Lloyd Cole. I mean, my goodness, we knew, and I think we just didn't tell our brains. We told ourselves that, of course, he'll want to ride off into the sunset. Of course he's not going to coach again. This is his place. Utah was his place. He wants to hang out with the grandkids. His wife doesn't want to pick up and move anywhere. We made a lot of assumptions about how things would go with Kyle Whittingham, but it looks like he's going to be the next head coach of the University of Michigan, and we are absolutely here for all of it because that's what our job is, Lloyd. But
yes, it is. And by the way, shout out. I'm just going to shout out everybody.
Yeah, all of our
staff, because it's what we
staff.
do.
Yep.
Everybody on staff. When news like this happens, it's like, okay, you know what? Got to come in. You and I were talking about it in the break. It reminds me a little bit of the Gordon Hayward back in, what was it, 2017?
And it's a mere, and that's just a scratch. The Gordon Hayward is just a scratch on the news. And CBS Sports now, according to CBS Sports, Jay Hill's name is now being floated out there as the defensive coordinator for Kyle Whittingham if this deal does go through.
Part of that ripple effect that we talked about.
Yeah, we were just talking about how this thing's going to get affected because it looks like, because the name that's already been floated out from the offensive coordinator position was Jason Beck, who, of course, had his successful 1 year at Utah. And Kyle Whittingham, for all the things that he does really, really well, I think maintain amazing relationships with former offensive coordinators might not necessarily be the one that he has. But he had success 1 year with Jason Beck, the number 6 offense in the entire country. And CBS Sports reporting that Jay Hill's name is at the top of the list for Kyle Whittingham at defensive coordinator at Michigan. So what that ripple effect looks like for BYU, of course, will be absolutely massive as well because arguably, obviously, you've got Kalani, who's that main piece down there, but Jay Hill and the success that defense has brought. And by the way, with the era of the transfer portal, the names that might end up leaving the BYU program, the Utah program, from a player's perspective, to go with their coaches potentially leaving is also massive. Joining us on the program right now, Jeremiah Jensen. He hosts, let me check the list here, JJ and Alex in the afternoons on the KSL Sports Zone.
Yeah, maybe you've heard of that show. Maybe you guys have listened to that.
Maybe, yeah.
Hey,
maybe.
JJ.
JJ, first of all.
What's up, Lloyd? How you doing?
Good, man. I just killed myself a ham sandwich. A Christmas ham sandwich.
You're having a good...
Yeah.
Is that a post Christmas ham?
That is a post-Christmas ham. I just killed it in the break. I brought a couple sandwiches. Mama made me, and when I say mama, I mean my wife. Made us some sandwiches.
You don't want to be that guy.
Made us some sandwiches and, shared one. I'm sorry I did not bring you one.
Well, no, it's fine. I had the Lunchables. I'm fine. But here's the other thing, Salt Lake City FatLoss.com. No, but I was told down in the newsroom, and Jared, you may be able to confirm this. I mean, they do. When it's Christmas, they bust out all of the foods for the staff that have to be there on Christmas Day, and so I was told that I've got a beat on some Christmas ham that may be down in the TV newsroom fridge that we might have to rate a little bit later. But that's how we keep it going. We keep the energy levels up on a day like today. We just heard Annapolis just threw it in our ear that CBS is reporting that Jay Hill would be the defensive coordinator. That's not a shock, knowing the connections that they have. It's a shock when we start to think about how wild the last few weeks have been, but this ripple effect of Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan is going to be vast, and it will affect these local programs likely for a long time. Your thoughts on this whole thing going down?
Oh, the whole thing. My goodness. Where do I start? Where do I begin? First of all, this is a awesome hire for Michigan, by the way. I know that people listening right now here in Utah don't care about Michigan, but it needs to be acknowledged how great of a hire this is for Michigan. Because if you look at the Michigan situation, this is not a program that is broken or lacking talent. They just had a bad guy as a head coach that got caught doing bad things, and now they're looking for somebody to replace him. Who better to come in to a program like that and to provide structure, discipline? You're not going to find a more squeaky clean head coach as far as some of that drama and all that kind of stuff. He's all business. This is exactly what Michigan needs. And doesn't Kyle Whittingham feel like a Big Ten guy? Everything he's about, the way he coaches, the way he does things, the identity of his teams throughout his time and tenure feels like a Big Ten team. So it makes perfect sense for Michigan to come in and bring Kyle Whittingham in. Yes, at age 66. I don't think this is a long-term thing, but for now, this is perfect. It's exactly what Michigan needs to do to clean up this problem that they have. But the talent is there for Kyle Whittingham to go in there and win immediately. Now, this is where it impacts everybody here. And this is my first thought. We heard it made Alex, we talked about this.
Yeah.
The Michigan job comes up. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if Kyle Whittingham would be interested. And here we are. He's very interested, and they're very interested in him. And it looks like this is going to happen. It could be officially announced as soon as this afternoon sometime. Now the impact is, what does this mean for the programs here in Utah? Because he has so many ties here. And as you guys know, Kyle Whittingham is about relationships and loyalty with the guys that he knows and trusts. He rarely goes outside of his circle. To bring in coaches and assistants. He likes to go with people he knows and trusts. And there's been a lot of them. And a lot of them still work in the state at Utah and BYU and maybe other places. We'll see what kind of staff he brings. So it's no surprise to me that Jason Beck would be somebody who he's targeting as his offensive coordinator choice. And obviously, Jay Hill makes a lot of sense as well. This could impact both BYU and Utah in ways that we're processing right now, right? What would it mean to Utah? You finally bring in an offensive coordinator that gets Utah in the top 5 offensively, which you never thought you'd see outside of special seasons at Utah. And BYU, losing Jay Hill would be a massive blow to that program, almost an irreplaceable blow to that program. I don't know who out there Kalani could go get that could provide both the scheme, the experience, and the recruiting ability of Jay Hill that wouldn't be a step backwards. And so this could have a huge impact on Utah. And I look at more assistants at Utah. Does Jim Harding want to go to Michigan? Is that a discussion? We talk, others have talked about Lewis Powell and others. There's so many good coaches on both of those staffs that what impact is this going to have on both Utah and BYU when it comes to personnel? I don't know about players. I imagine there could be some, but the players, I'm sure if he could bring some with him, he would. But I think the bigger impact, the bigger fallout from this is going to be how it impacts the coaching staffs at both Utah and BYU, and both the short-term and long-term impacts it could have on both the Cougars and the Utes.
Hey, we've all seen the movie Jerry Maguire. I'm feeling this when Jerry Maguire is being sent out the door and everybody's scrambling. He's scrambling to get all of his players and everybody signed and I'm feeling like Kyle Whittingham is now, is making calls. Obviously, Morgan Scalley's making calls. Kalani has to be, as they're getting ready for a bowl game, has to be making calls. I'm picturing a lot of scrambling that's happening right now with Utah and BYU.
Yeah, I think the last concern or worry up on the hill is that bowl game right now, right?
Not even a thought.
What kind of machinations are going on in the background? I think Coach Atuaya even tweeted out today an interesting tweet if you want to go on Twitter and see what he said after all this news came out, because this directly impacts everybody in that room, because either you're going to be asked by Kyle Whittingham if you want to come to Michigan, or an assistant could be moved and then shuffling can take place. There's so many scenarios that could play out here depending on who Kyle Whittingham wants to talk to about assistant coaching jobs, or who could be taken, who gets left behind, how are those voids filled. My goodness. I mean, if you're trying to prepare for a bowl game while you're dealing with all that, I can't imagine. It's a good thing nobody cares about bowl games anymore, right? Because this would be a massive distraction, and you're playing Nebraska, who has their own problems.
Right.
But how does that, it was already kind of awkward to begin with, because the stepping down thing, and even in Kyle Whittingham, when he talked to, finally did his first media availability after all this news came out, and talking about how he didn't want to wear out his welcome and everything, it already felt a little bit awkward with, the transition. Now this takes it to another level, because now you've got Kyle Whittingham, who's still through the bowl game, is going to coach this bowl game. And if you're Morgan Scalley, you're wondering how many of these guys are going with him and how many are staying with me. What kind of dynamic does that create in that room and in that program? These are guys that have coached together forever. This is a relationship between Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham that goes way back. 20 plus years to when Morgan was being recruited. 25 years as recruited as a player, and then obviously as a coach. How does that dynamic working in that room right now? What's it like being in there? I don't know. I would be really fascinated to know what that is like, but I can't imagine the feeling. And maybe everyone's cool with it, but how could you? If you're Morgan Scalley, now you got to replace Jason Beck. Jason Beck's going to be coaching this game, and he's already trying to figure out which players on this roster do I want to bring with me to Michigan. That's playing out in that room this week. So leading up to that game next week. This is wild.
Yeah. So I just went through. I just got an email from Kenny Cox, who of course is one of the SIDs for BYU football, and he sent out, because they just had the head coach press conference for the Pop-Tart Bowl, the last one to preview everything. Kalani and Brent Key obviously getting ready for this one. I just scrolled through the transcript, and they have all the questions in bold. Shocking, there was no question about any of this. I think a lot of it was canned, and a lot of it was just pre-set up. It was like, hey, what kind of an impact has Bruce Mitchell had on the offensive line for this BYU team? I'm like, nobody wants to know that. We want to know what the heck's going on with this coaching staff. But yeah, it's a mess. College football has become a mess in that sense, and Michigan has to get this done as soon as possible, which is why I think that you are going to see something earlier rather than later. But as it starts to play out, I don't even know what an option would be at offensive coordinator for Utah. They've already got to try to figure out a defensive coordinator, because Morgan Scalley is going to be the head coach. So you potentially have to replace an offensive and defensive coordinator. You potentially have to, down at BYU, replace a defensive coordinator. These are the biggest jobs in the state, short of the head coaching job at those schools. And so how do you get right at these programs? Everybody who's talking to us is just like, I don't care about Michigan. How is Utah going to be next year? How is BYU going to be? Because it does affect us probably more than and again, the coaching dominoes that went down in the last couple of years have been wild, but they haven't affected us to the extent that we've seen this one is going to. And I wonder how these big programs are going to be able to recover and replace these big-time names.
Well, that happens all the time. This was different because, you look at what Jay Hill's doing at BYU. Jay Hill's been in the state for such a long time. And Jason Beck's bounced around quite a bit.
Yep.
And that's what he needed to do to develop in his career. But his ties go back to BYU, and BYU fans have known him for 25 years. And so by that, Utah fans have been familiar and know the name Jason Beck because of his time as a player at BYU and also his coaching stint at BYU. If these were randos that we didn't really know very well or we didn't think were having a big impact, it's not a big deal. Coaching changes happen all the time. Assistant coaches move around each and every year. That carousel's always been going on. This is different because the relationships and the names involved and the impact that those coaches have makes this different. And you look at what Jason Beck has done in a short time at Utah. It's not been easy for Utah to find an offensive coordinator that is progressive and creative and forward thinking when it comes to running an offense, not to diminish what any others have done. Andy Ludwig certainly had his great years there, but there's something different and modern about what Jason Beck does with that offense. And you saw the fruit of that this year. Imagine if they can continue to get even more players here that can run what he does. But obviously that's not something that may happen now. Jay Hill, I just talked about the impact he has. He's been here forever. Seeing Jay Hill at Michigan would throw everybody for a loop as much as it is seeing Kyle Whittingham at Michigan. Jay Hill, he played at Utah, coached at Utah, and then at BYU. He's never left the state, which, and obviously what he did at Weber State, he's been here forever. We know Jay Hill. So seeing him outside the state and doing something different would be a big change. So that's why this is a little bit different. And also the amount of guys that have been here a long time, and that it's just the familiarity with these assistant coaches that is driving that. Now, the honest truth, guys, is I think that the panic and the worry, that's different for each and every assistant coach that could possibly leave. I mean, obviously the impact of Jay Hill leaving is much different than someone else on Utah staff, and, a position coach on Utah staff or BYU staff, potentially, or whatever. It's about the fact that Jay Hill is so important to what BYU does. But and Jason Beck hasn't been at Utah as long. I think that these coaches will be fine. Kalani will be able to go out and get somebody that would fill those shoes. It obviously wouldn't be at that level, and they'd have to grow into that. And as far as Morgan Scalley, I mean, I don't know what his relationship is with Jason Beck anyway. I mean, I have no idea. So I'm sure these guys are used to going out and interviewing new coaches each and every year. This is part of it. Morgan Scalley wanted this job. He wanted this opportunity. Welcome. Welcome to being a head coach in 2025 in whatever this world of college football is that exists now, that we're all trying to process and figure out and learn about, because it's different than any time before. Morgan's going to have to figure that out. He's going to have to go out and do that process and find the right guy. Kalani Sitake is going to have to potentially go out and get that DC that can have a similar impact. But this is what coaches have to do all the time. Yeah. So maybe we are overreacting slightly because of the names that are involved. And obviously the bigger deal is Kyle Whittingham wearing a hat that doesn't say Utah on it is going to throw all of us for a loop because of what he accomplished at Utah. It just felt like he was going to be there forever. He had other opportunities to leave during his time and didn't. But now knowing that this is actually happening, the shock of that, of not only seeing him go somewhere else to coach, but for it to be Michigan, I think we're all trying to wrap our head around that, what it means. But as far as assistants go, those two would be massive losses. But this happens in college football every year, and Morgan and Kalani would have to figure it out, and I'm sure they will. This is what they do, and this is why they have those networks. That's why they go to these coaching conventions. This is where that all pays off. Kalani goes on cruises with, it feels like, every coach in the country. This is when that pays off, right? Hopefully, Morgan is highly sought. I know Morgan has a tremendous reputation around the country. He's spoken at some of those coaching conventions and events. He knows people. He is very well connected, very well respected. They'll be able to go out and hire coaches that can do an adequate job. But yes, it's going to have a huge impact if those names we've mentioned actually leave and follow Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. it could have a colossal impact on recruiting. And we don't even know the players yet that could possibly be leaving. But again, we've seen, this is the new world. It's transfer portal. Players leave every year. So what? Right? We see it happen every year. And then all of a sudden, these teams they're just fine next fall because they go out and find whoever they need. So, massive impact. They'll have to figure it out. But certainly it's shocking to see all this develop because, man, imagine a month ago sitting here and seeing this all play out and witnessing what we're seeing right now. It'd be incredible.
Well, I think you're going to see, most of what people are saying too, and I wonder how much of this is, the public perception versus what really is going on. That's a tough thing to be able to call, but there are a lot of folks that feel like Utah botched this thing and that they screwed it up and that they could have had Kyle Whittingham as the head coach still, but they felt like they needed to move on from something. And I think he obviously, as soon as he started to feel that, was like, I'm not going to be the guy who ends up being like this, you guys think I'm a lame duck coach? Fine. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm just going to keep this thing out.
It was a weird place that both sides were in.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
A weird place for
100%.
Utah and a weird place for Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scally.
And I think you're going to get, the good news is we do get to see a lot of what the back and forth conversations we'll have. As a public institution, we'll be able to see if there was a buyout that was involved with it. That was part of the quote unquote prodding that PK referred to of how Kyle Whittingham got out. I think everybody knew that he didn't necessarily have the choice. I think that they at least kind of put it out there. My question, the thing about the Jay Hill hire, if he ends up becoming the defensive coordinator of Michigan, is that felt like as big of a win as Kalani staying in Provo, I think, for a lot of BYU fans. And I think that's the part, too. And again, you do have to replace DCs all the time in college football. I think, frankly, people thought that Jay Hill was going to take a big-time head coaching job somewhere else anyway. And in the case of Morgan Scally, people felt great about the idea of the number 6 offense in the country being, quote-unquote, back next year. And now everything's changed. You have an offensive and defensive coordinator gone, a possible defensive coordinator at BYU as well, and the impact is going to go deep here. I don't know how you have success, though, with a program like that right now in Michigan. How long would it take for a guy like Kyle to turn things around in Ann Arbor?
Well, that's my point I said earlier, is this is perfect for Michigan because the program was not broken. They even had success this year. They beat Ohio State last year in a down year.
Yeah.
They got talent. He doesn't have to build anything there per se. All he has to do is bring his structure and his coaching style and his discipline and the way he does things to that program with the players currently there. And then it's Michigan. He'll be able to assess what they have there. Obviously they have a quarterback issue. Is Bryce Underwood going to be back or not? He's going to have to make a decision on that. Yeah. And if not, then does he come to Utah to get some of those guys? Is Dampier and Bert Ficklin, are they Michigan quarterbacks? Is that something that fits? That's all going to have to play itself out. But the players are there. He's just got to go evaluate and bring what I said, and then they can go out and get some of those transfer portal guys they need. I think Kyle Whittingham can win there quickly. I think Michigan's fine when where that comes. That's why this hire is so great for Michigan. You talk about why did Kyle Whittingham feel the need to leave, to step down? We're all going to want to know the story of that, and we're all going to be talking to people and trying to figure out what happened there. Did Kyle Whittingham just feel like the way he was being treated was being pushed out? Was something said to him by somebody above? Was he prodded out? What are the words? He was, and I'll go back to Kyle's own words that he said after, when he the first time he spoke after stepping down, was he felt like he didn't want to wear out his welcome. Well, who made him feel like he was wearing out his welcome? Because you don't just say that. We all know if we're somewhere where things feel off, or there's a reason why that is, right? So why did he feel like he possibly was wearing out his welcome? What happened behind the scenes? We're all dying to know. We all want to know. But it's pretty obvious to me, guys, that he felt that way. And what do you want to do if you feel like you're not wanted anymore somewhere? We're all competitors. We work in a competitive industry, and we know how competitive these coaches are. Don't they want to go show everybody they were wrong? Don't they want to stick it to somebody? when they feel like someone said, you don't have it anymore, we need to move on, we'd be better off without you? And I'm not saying anybody at Utah said that, but it's pretty clear to me that he felt some of those emotions. Don't you want to kind of show everybody, I still got it, and I'm going to show you? And that perhaps what Kyle is doing right now is taking on a tremendously incredible challenge that he deserves and has earned the right to go do, but also at the same time to show everybody, hey, you thought I was washed. You thought I was done. You thought I should retire. I'm going to go to Michigan and compete for a national championship. You're going to regret this. Doesn't it feel, guys, like that's something that's going on right now? And by the way, on the way out, I'm going to take some of your best assistant coaches with me.
From the whole state.
Well, he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's going to go try to win at Michigan. If I'm Kyle and I can get Jay Hill, I'm getting Jay Hill because Jay Hill's one of the best DCs in the country.
Yep.
And the player relationships that Jay Hill has. I want some of those BYU players too. Why not? I'm Kyle Whittingham. I'm the head coach at Michigan. And think about that. The amount of confidence that you get now from that is like, Michigan hired me. Michigan wants me. I'm the man. This is what I want to do. Now I have the funds and the power to go do it. I would want to. I mean, you can see why. And guys, Kyle Whittingham is one of the most intense, if not the most intense competitor I've ever met in my life. I've been around him. I had a chance to see how he operates, just even in his own office. The amount of attention to detail. He has every minute of his day planned. Every minute of his day. There's not a more disciplined, more structured person I've ever seen in my life. And he's going to take that to Michigan. He's still got it, man. I think he's the intensity that he goes about things and the fiercely competitive person he is. This is exactly feeds into that kind of competitiveness that he has. Is I'm going to show you guys what I can do. You didn't think I could coach anymore? I'm about to show you at one of the most storied programs in all of college football. I'm going to show you, and I think that's what's going on right now.
Nobody holds a grudge like Kyle Whittingham. Just go see the
It was
Utah,
the third quarter.
Yeah, just
it was
go
the
see
third quarter.
Utah-Wyoming game.
Did you want us to quit? It was the third quarter.
Absolutely.
We all know that.
Joe Glenn has caught so many strays today on this.
And if he feels like he's been wronged, which obviously, like, he wasn't ready to go. So if he feels like he was wronged in any way, he's coming for you.
Even if it's a perception, Lloyd.
Exactly.
Even if he perceived it, he's going to be driven and motivated by that to go show people. And I totally understand why Kyle Whittingham is taking this job and wants this job and wants this opportunity. It makes total sense to me.
So tons of Michigan fans, by the way, coming out of the woodwork and going, this is what we need. This is what we need. Very few reaching out and going, no, this is a bad hire. Everybody wants. I think part of the issue is that winning at Michigan's one thing, and usually that fixes everything. I mean, you could just look at this program that's been an absolute mess and has been filled with bad people, and winning still was still the biggest deal. They're like, I don't know, I can deal with the off the field stuff, and I could deal with the cheating allegations, but Utah, of course. There's a different vibe with Coach Whittingham, and I think people come in there and go, well, he's going to clean up the place. He's not going to actively go in and be like, I'm going to clean this place up from the top down. You know what he's doing? He's going in there and go, I have one way to coach, and this is the culture that I bring. And by the way, along the way, I guarantee that it'll get cleaned up. But it's not because I'm coming in here in cleanup mode. I come in here in Kyle Whittingham competitive mode. And that's the same, by the way, Michigan fans remember over the past, 10 and 15 years when they played him in 08, when they played him in that back-to-back series in 14 and 15. And Kyle Whittingham beat him in every contest, And so there's obviously they know who Kyle Whittingham is. They can't pretend. And Kyle Whittingham, by the way, that national championship run, it's back on the table and probably more than it ever has been just by taking this job. And as one of the people pointed out, it just feels weird because will Kyle Whittingham have a seizure when he has to mutter the term "Go Blue" when he gets to Michigan? The answer is probably not because the green part helps that. The green will always help you say "Go Blue." JJ, we appreciate it, man. Jeremiah Jensen. We've all been off during some of this break here, but we've all been watching this very, very closely. And then today we're all working because here we are talking about.
It's been good.
Thanks,
I mean, this is a massive story. So
oh yeah,
it's a massive story, and it's fun to be able to get on, and I know a lot of people listening. I mean, I saw people on Twitter. It's like, you guys need to be on. Like, here we are, guys. We're definitely on, and we want to talk about this because this is a massive story. It's going to continue to be a massive story. We're going to see the fallout from this in the coming days and weeks. But it's been great to get on and talk this through, guys, because I had a lot of thoughts as soon as this happened, and so it's been fun to share some of those thoughts and get that out. But yeah, what a day! Massive story, and we'll continue to follow it.
We're trying to figure out which one or what a bigger local story has been that we've covered. And the Gordon Hayward stuff is actually not that big of a deal compared to this. No. I guess when Rudy Gobert had COVID down in Oklahoma City, that ended up having a lot of repercussions. But that was
that changed the world.
That was a different scenario.
Was a different scenario.
But from a
changed it in a different way.
JJ, you've been covering this market for 20 years. We've all kind of watched a lot of big news come and go. Where does this one land, do you think, in stuff that we've been covering?
Yeah, it's significantly up there. The story's not done developing, so the judgment will come once it's all fleshed out, because we don't know who's leaving or who's going. Look, if Kyle Whittingham just goes and coaches Michigan, and Utah and BYU were able to retain all their assistants, and we see maybe one or two or maybe no transfers, then it's not as big of a story, right? Because it's just, Kyle Whittingham is going to take the Michigan job, and his legacy stayed in Utah stays intact, and it's just a cool chapter in Kyle Whittingham's coaching history. But guys, we know that that's probably not how this is going to shape out. And if it shapes out the way we think, how do Utah fans feel about Kyle Whittingham if their coaching staff ends up getting gutted and some of the key players leave?
And BYU fans already still dislike him, so it doesn't really matter there.
And what if that's the thing with Jay Hill, is like no big deal. But what impact does Jay Hill leaving BYU have on BYU's program?
Massive.
So
you take a big step back immediately.
Yeah, 100%. So that's the story. The story magnifies as those dominoes continue to fall. And so the judgment on what impact or how significant this is in Utah sports history is still developing, and we're all going to sit there and watch each domino fall and go, what's next? Because this is just getting started.
Jeremiah, we appreciate it, man. I love seeing the rumors and things swirling, because we lick our chops when it comes to this stuff. And I know that you're a breaking news, sports breaking news junkie like we are, and so we appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on in short term. And well, guess what? We'll chat with you again, I'm assuming, in the near future about all of this. So there you go. Thanks, JJ. Good. Appreciate it, man.
Yep. See you guys.
There you go. Jeremiah Jensen. Let's take a break. Well, should we take a little quick break? Yeah, we'll take a quick break. Yeah. We've been going for a while. Let's take that break. We'll come back.
Sorry, Steve. We're going to get to you here.
We'll get to Steve Bartle in just one moment here. I do also have a very, very we have a clip from Dave Portnoy we want to play a little bit later, arguably one of Michigan's at least most loud-spoken fans on the internet, and what Stooley president has to say about his Blue hiring, the possibility of hiring Kyle Whittingham. According to them, spoiler alert, they're back officially. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. Steve Bartle joins us next, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
I don't know if it's ever out of your system. I mean, it's in your blood, and so I don't know about that. Not that being said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but it's when you got the coaching in your blood, it just doesn't go away. Well, the program's in a good place right now. As I've said many times, after last season, just didn't sit right with anybody, particularly me. Came back, and unfortunately, we were able to get the ship righted, and everything's on track. The program, like I said, is in a good spot. Got good coaches. Coach Scally will come in and do a great job. Got good players, so now is the time.
Welcome on in, everybody. The KSL Sports Zone marching along here on a breaking news day, the day after Christmas. We appreciate them waiting till after Christmas. Lloyd, that could have been the alternative. We could have been here right now, yesterday. But instead, the possibility of Kyle Whittingham being hired as the University of Michigan next head coach. It's all but a done deal, according to sources, multiple. And not just that, the names that are being floated out there for the possible offensive coordinator job, Jason Beck's name at the very, very top of the list, according to those sources. Jay Hill's name at the very top of the list for the defensive coordinator side of things. And so you would see a massive shift here in the state of Utah when it comes to the coaching across the entire state for the two biggest programs. Joining us on the program right now, he is our Ute insider for KSLSports.com. Steve, I know we all imagined we'd have a nice break, but we know how it goes. We don't get to have nice breaks sometimes. We can't have nice things all the time, but massive news. Your thoughts initially as we saw this thing go down. I think I dismissed the Michigan rumors and rolled my eyes at the very beginning of all of that process. Were you always kind of thinking that this would have been a possibility for Whit to take this type of a job?
Yeah, it's been interesting following this whole thing and, going from the moment he stepped down. Once that became a thing, I got an update that he was pretty interested in making a run at that Michigan job from somebody. It wasn't any sort of thing where I felt like I could report on it, like Kyle was going to make a run, but just kind of was told that don't be surprised if Kyle makes a run at this. And so here we are. It's crazy. I woke up this morning at 5 a.m. ready to go to the gym, ready to get a head start on my New Year's resolutions. And, I was all ready to get after it in the gym. And then Pete Thamel drops the tweet that Kyle Whittingham has emerged as the leading candidate. And so I typed out an article on my phone. And if you've ever done that, it's ridiculous. Don't do it. It's a horrible experience. And so,
did you do that while working out, Steve?
No, I wasn't working out while I did it. I can't do that. But I was at the gym while I did it.
Any excuse to not have to hit that third set, I'll take it. You know what I mean?
Hey, amen to that, dude. Amen. But it's been interesting. So, here we are. And I always felt like Kyle was, with the Michigan situation being what it is, having to fire Sharon Moore and, with what Michigan has had to deal with over the last couple of years with, a lot of difficulties in terms of, troubles and problems with their athletic department, within their athletic department. I always felt like Whittingham was a really good hire considering what went down with Sharon Moore, the timing of it all, right? When you're a big program like Michigan, you want to be at the front of the line in the coaching carousel. And this year that was LSU and that was Florida. Michigan, was behind the eight ball, and to land a coach like Kyle Whittingham, that's a significant, almost like, it's falling upwards is what it is for the Wolverines. So, I know the deal is close to completion and all that. And I anticipate seeing something today or tomorrow morning.
We're all kind of hoping that it happens like in the next 15 minutes. So if we can will that to happen, I know there's a lot more that has to get done because I would assume that they probably want to make that known sooner rather than later. They want to get past their past as quickly as possible. They want to be able to get immediately on the board because when you make a hire and they go, hey, look what we're doing now. We're cleaning ourselves up. You know what I mean? Like they want that image to go out as soon as they can. And maybe that's with a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator all ready to be able to announce with it. Maybe that doesn't happen until later. I don't know what they want, but I know that Michigan will want to have that announcement made ASAP. And the powers that be, I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there, and Steve, you're not above this either, but the air traffic control, the possibility of seeing a charter jet heading to Ann Arbor out of Salt Lake today or yesterday, I'm sure people are looking into it. It's a wild time, but what do they do what were they thinking from the defensive coordinator position anyway at Utah as Morgan Scalley was trying to figure these things out? And then now, if they have to adding an OC into it, is that something that is going to put Utah behind the eight ball for the next season, for even longer term, or do you think there are guys that would be available immediately that they could feel good about?
Well, there's a lot there. I heard that Kyle Whittingham was going to be in Ann Arbor today. Haven't been able to confirm that officially, but was told by a pretty good source that he'd be in Ann Arbor today. I would anticipate that Michigan and Kyle have a really good idea of what the staff is going to look like by the time they make the announcement official. So that means offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, probably a couple position coaches. I think Michigan is going to want to have this pretty buttoned up by the time the news is done and announced. And so what it seems like is, Jason Beck, it sounds like he's the leading candidate to be the offensive coordinator for Michigan. And then, too, it sounds like Jay Hill is also kind of the leading candidate for the defensive coordinator position, which obviously is pretty significant as well. So in terms of what it means for Utah and Morgan Scalley specifically and how they move forward, frankly, I don't know. This is going to be a pretty significant moment, for Morgan Scalley as he begins his career, right, where he now has to make a pretty significant hire at offensive coordinator. On the defensive side of the ball, it sounds like those coaches are pretty well locked in with Morgan Scalley. Speaking of Coach Swan, Coach Shaw, Coach Ellis, and Coach Lewis Powell, that's been the overwhelming sentiment. As those guys are pretty locked in with Scalley. And so from that side of the ball, it sounds like he's got a pretty good idea of who that's going to be. I've said it before, and I continue to hear that Coach Swan is probably the leading candidate, for that defensive coordinator position. And so that helps him there. But the offensive coordinator position, that's now a pretty significant job that he has to go out and find somebody. And given where we're at, in late December, going into January, you've got a bowl game next week where, Morgan Scalley is probably going to be the head coach of that game. It's going to be really interesting to see what Utah is able to do in that game. But then for Scalley, who he elects to make a focus in their offensive coordinator pursuit. And then two, it's not just that. It's, there's potential personnel departures, not just personnel, but personnel staff departures. I wouldn't be surprised to see Utah's general manager, Robert Blecken, follow Kyle Whittingham to Michigan. And that's now a pretty significant role in college football. So this is pretty impactful, and Morgan Scalley is going to have to hit the ground running here now that it seems Kyle Whittingham is off to Ann Arbor.
Steve, who and this is kind of speculation. Who are like do you think is going to be your for Morgan Scalley? Who is like his must-haves, guys that he absolutely needs to retain? Obviously, I think Jason Beck's only here a year. I think that one's going to be difficult. There's obviously not going to be as much maybe loyalty with Morgan there. But who do you think are like the must-haves that Morgan Scalley really, really needs to land to try to keep a little bit of maybe chemistry or whatever with this staff?
Yeah, I think obviously it starts on the defensive side of the ball. And, as long as he can keep his defensive coaches here in Salt Lake City, that's going to be a big relief to him, as they have to start to retool and all that. But as long as Utah has their defensive coaches, they have their defensive players, it'll be a competitive team. Offensively, you're hoping to hang on to as many guys as you can, but obviously it sounds like Beck is the leading candidate for the coordinator job. It also sounds like Jim Harding is likely going to follow Whittingham to Michigan. Harding is from the Midwest. He's from Ohio, and I would assume that Michigan has always sort of been a dream job for him. He's pretty loyal to Whittingham and the opportunity that he provided him. So you're going to want to hang on to as many offensive line players as you can. And Isaac Asiata could be pretty impactful there. So you're going to want to hang on to him as well. And then, if you can hang on to Atawaya and Micah Simon, that's pretty significant as well to keep the chemistry. But, again, it's all going to depend on what Scalley elects to do with that offensive coordinator position, right? There could be an offensive coordinator that wants to bring in his own guys and bring in that chemistry, from his side of things, which we saw with Beck last year, bringing in Simon and Atawaya. So there's a lot of things to factor in here. But as long as Scally can keep the defensive coaches, keep the bulk of that of those defensive players, keep Asiata and a couple other guys on the offense side of the ball. Obviously, at the quarterback position, that's going to be really interesting to follow here. I think Bird Ficklin, he's signed and ready to run it back for 2026. With Devin Dampier, we know that he has a really good relationship with Jason Beck, and even despite Bryce Underwood's presence there at Michigan, I could see Devin Dampier wanting to follow Jason Beck to Michigan, which would be another significant factor. So there's a lot at play here, and again, it just kind of speaks to the hole that Morgan Scally is being placed in, as he takes over the program here.
Steve, one thing that also has been kind of eating away at us is the internal turmoil that can come from something like this that feels like Utah kind of, quote unquote, blew it with Kyle Whittingham. How do they pick up those pieces and at least maybe repair what the public may be seeing as an attempt to or just really losing out in a moment like this when and forcing Whit out and getting him to a place like Michigan when obviously it felt like he actually wasn't ready to go?
Yeah, this is an interesting conversation, because Morgan Scally obviously is considered the future of the program. We know that Whittingham is, to the tail end of his career. And I think one of the more difficult things is the year by year, is he retiring? Is he coming back? I think that's something that has been difficult to navigate, for certain people specifically. And with Scally, he's getting up there and he's had plenty of opportunities to leave Utah before. He had, a handful of opportunities to leave Utah this month. And I think with this whole situation, I feel like Utah prioritized the future with Morgan Scally, and that's going to be the topic of conversation, right? Is obviously Whittingham is a legend and a living legend. He's done so much for the University of Utah, for the Utah football program. He's built it into a national program that media members view highly and have a tremendous amount of respect for. But, I think a lot of, the last couple of years have really have done a number, on people there in the program with decisions that have been made, in terms of personnel, in terms of, injury and that sort of thing. I just think there's a lot of things to consider here. And I think at the heart of it was Morgan Scally's future with the program. And I think had Whittingham come back, that Scally is very likely gone from the University of Utah. Now, obviously, do you criticize Utah for choosing the future over a few more years of Kyle Whittingham when, there was a possibility where, if Whittingham does stay in place, could Utah have hired Morgan Scally back in a few years from now? Who knows? We will never find that out. But I just think there's so much to consider here. And so it's difficult to say that, Utah messed this up. But certainly it's worthy of criticism. It's worthy of questioning. And I think, Utah had the reasonings for wanting to prioritize Morgan Scally and the future. I think Morgan brings a lot to the table when you're talking about the current dynamics of a college football program, the demands in terms of needing to generate NIL. I think Morgan Scally is going to do a lot on that front to really kind of move Utah forward there. I think he can do a lot to help Utah bring in more resources. I think there's a lot of excitement about what Morgan can do at the helm for Utah football. But again, given the fact that you have a living legend in Kyle Whittingham, a few more years of that, man, it's a tough thing to to consider. There's a lot of things here to consider, and it's a difficult conversation for sure.
Steve Bartle, he's our Ute insider for KSLSports.com, and he's on top of all of this, of course. And as soon as anything becomes official, you can, of course, read his byline at KSLSports.com. You can listen to us streaming live right now, and we've got a lot of hours already in the books. So we've already been doing with this thing and running with it since about 11:30 here live in studio. And so, Steve, thanks for jumping on a day that we all thought we were going to have off, but the breaking news is always the fun stuff anyway. So we appreciate you jumping on and being a part of it today, man. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have a good one. There
you go, Steve Bartle. Yes, you can tune in to any of the over-the-air options, but of course you can stream all of this live, and then we're going to get the all of these across all of our shows on the podcast form as well. If you missed any of the conversation we're going to have, we still anticipate having a conversation with a beat writer from Michigan, the Detroit Free Press. He's going to join us at the 2:05 hour, and I think that's going to be interesting. Tony Garcia, Detroit Free Press is who he writes for, but he covers Michigan football and basketball. So interesting times being able to figure this thing out. We'll talk to him in just a couple minutes. Speaking of a couple minutes, I wanted you to hear a little chunk of a bite here, Lloyd, of Michigan's arguably biggest, at least loudest fan currently, Dave Portnoy, talking about...
You mean Provo Dave?
Provo Dave is now going to become Ann Arbor Dave, I think, for sure. It's going to be Kyle Whittingham Dave. Here's what he said when he took to Twitter today, because obviously people have been wondering about what this program is going to look like, and here's what Portnoy had to say about it.
We are so back, I don't even know what to do about it. Listen, I was a little worried about this Michigan coaching search. Not going to lie. I was saying, I hope we know what we're doing. I hope these guys in charge, I don't even know who that is, but I hope we have a plan, because time is a ticking and I'm getting nervous. You saw Kalen DeBoer. No, I didn't want him. You saw Dillingham didn't get offered. I was like, oh, I would have loved Dillingham. And then what happens? Kyle Whittingham. Yes, Kyle Whittingham from Utah. 2 decades at Utah. One of the greatest coaches in the history of college football. Listen, Provo Dave knows him well. He built a powerhouse, tough, physical, man, Michigan-type football. I've heard Urban Meyer, he never dreamed this. I heard Urban Meyer whisper in production meetings at Big Noon Kickoff, man, that Whittingham's the best coach I've ever seen. And now he comes to Michigan. This isn't just rebuilding, restarting. This is the beginning of a dynasty. The Michigan ethos, the Michigan man mantra, it's back. This is an upgrade. I never wish ill will on anything. I never want my head coach to be having an affair with his executive assistant and then run into her house with a butter knife and threaten to kill himself in front of her and harm. Nobody wants that. But when you put your bet on a pillow, a Michigan man pillow at night, and you think how this thing shook out, honestly, it couldn't have shook out better. We now have one of the best coaches in the history of college football, leading the best program in the history of college football. This thing, I couldn't be happier to welcome Kyle Whittingham to the Michigan Man family. He is an honorary instant Michigan man. And if I'm Ohio State, I'm not worried about the playoffs. I'm worried, will we ever beat this team again? It is great to be a Michigan Wolverine. Say it together. It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine. It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine.
I think he's excited, Lloyd. I think Dave Portnoy's pretty darn excited.
You know what? That's what Kyle Whittingham will bring to Michigan.
I think that, honestly, I haven't seen. I mean, I think there's some folks out there that'll just poo-poo whatever the decision is that's being made. But you're telling me that that's not an upgrade, at least from Sharon Moore? I mean, times 1 million. Not just from the integrity standpoint, not just from like the you don't have to worry about that kind of crap standpoint. He's a better coach. I mean, just plain and simple.
Michigan fans who should be through the roof.
They should.
Now, Utah and BYU fans, yeah, they're gonna be a little grumpy. But like I said, like we've talked about, if Morgan Scalley comes out and wins, and does what many think that Morgan can do, and BYU keeps doing with it, then guess what? It won't even matter. It'll be fine. They won't be grumpy at Witt. They won't be grumpy at Utah. They won't be grumpy.
It'll take a minute. Yeah.
They'll be fine.
All right. We'll take the break. The reports, of course, is that it's all but a done deal with Kyle Whittingham going to the University of Michigan as a head coach. Who will he take with him as his offensive and defensive coordinator and other staff? That's yet to be seen. We will, of course, bring you any of that as soon as it comes down. Joining us next, right around the corner after this short break, we've got Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. He covers Michigan for the Detroit Free Press. We'll get his thoughts on this one and the news going down. He's working on a day like today, too. We'll take a break. 97.5 KSL Sports Zone. Welcome on in, everybody. Alex, Kirry, Lloyd, Cole. We're here live at the KSL Sports Zone. Of course, the news trickling out across the entire world of college football and the head coaching carousel that is very interesting all the time is that Kyle Whittingham, legendary Utah coach, former legendary Utah coach, after stepping down a couple of weeks ago, and Morgan Scalley taking that job officially, the Michigan job looks to be his. And we are all over this thing because obviously it's not just going to impact the Utah coaching staff. It'll also impact likely the BYU coaching staff if Jay Hill leaves as the defensive coordinator from BYU and heads to Michigan as well. The possibility is there. All of these things are just reports, so who knows what's going to happen. However, it looks to be pretty close to a done deal. Joining us on the program right now, he covers the University of Michigan for the Detroit Free Press. Tony Garcia joining us on the program. Tony, thanks for joining us on short notice today, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Initial thoughts. I think generally people seem very, very high on this pick of Kyle Whittingham coming to Ann Arbor. What have the last couple of weeks been like covering this team? And frankly, it's a little bit of the same of what's been over the past couple of years, which has been some off the field, not a lot of off the field stuff that's gotten in the way of the football side of things. What about the rumors with Coach Whittingham, and how's that affected the Michigan fan base?
Yeah, I was going to say last couple of weeks. I was going to say it feels like longer than that.
Yes.
But but certainly the last couple of weeks have been unlike anything we've seen in Ann Arbor, even given everything that's gone on. But yeah, I mean, things moved pretty quickly the last 24 hours. It sounds like with Kyle Whittingham. I was told, I think it was a little more than a week ago, that there was there was interest on Whittingham's side. Members of his camp had reached out to Ann Arbor, but they were still sort of circling back with Kalen DeBoer and Kenny Dillingham, and then DeBoer and Alabama beat Oklahoma, so that messed up that timeline. It sounds like they never got a firm offer into Dillingham. And so, I mean, Jed Fish was floated around, Jeff Brown was floated around, but personally, I think Kyle Whittingham is a great hire, and it's not just because I'm speaking on a Utah sports station. I mean, you know what he's about. I wrote earlier today for the Detroit Free Press. Michigan needed stability, and outside of him being 66, and so you don't know how long the runway is. He's as steady Eddie as it seems to get in the sport, and then you bring someone like that who's been able to prove to win in multiple leagues and be the winningest coach in Utah history, and really elevate that program. And you give him the financial backing and the brand and the resources of a Michigan, you can easily see the appeal. Not to mention, stylistically, he's similar to what Michigan wants to do. You want to run the ball, you want to play sound defense, you want to build through the trenches, and then you supplement it all with decent quarterback play. And do all that at Michigan, and you're off to a really good start.
As you look at how this thing went down and how these coaching searches go down is one thing, but the idea that you have to not just hire a brand new head coach, you also have to start repairing that image. How much of that do you think goes into a decision like this to bring a guy like Coach Whittingham, who we've covered for decades here in this market, and the guy is as squeaky clean as it gets? That's almost half of the hire, it feels like, is that you can get a guy who's in there who could solidify the program just based off of the culture that he builds wherever he goes.
Yeah, I think this time for Michigan, that was paramount. It was of the utmost importance, given, Jim Harbaugh won big, but it wasn't without some NCAA investigations and just headlines following him around. Mm-hmm. Jerome Moore was not winning at the same level, and then he had one of the most historic fallouts that, frankly, we've ever seen a coach have at this level. And so Michigan was, Biff Poggi, the interim coach, spoke about it earlier this week. Wow, that was only earlier this week, Monday. It's been a long week. He was talking about how Michigan's essentially been like a malfunctioning organization for the better part of half a decade, almost a decade, and athletic director Ward Manuel just wants it to stop. Now he is there's an investigation in his athletic department about who's known what and when, what the culture is like. That's expected to come out in the next month or so. So Michigan really did not want to hire anybody that had any red flags of any sort. Like I was told that Jed Fish, when they were running his background, there was a red flag of sorts that came up, and he's a guy who had some Michigan ties, having been a passing game coordinator under Jim Harbaugh in his early days. That kind of quickly ruled him out. And I think it is a very good decision to go to someone who is proven somewhere else, but does not have any ties to Michigan or anything that's been going on in the recent years.
So does Michigan, will they look to just completely clean up shop and just have Whittingham start fresh, or do you see them keeping, because obviously recruiting to Michigan is a little different than what Kyle Whittingham has been recruiting to Utah. So does Kyle Whittingham just completely hire his own staff, or do you see there's some guys on that coaching staff that maybe are retained?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, well, first and foremost, that's going to be up to Kyle, right? It's about who he wants around him. However, I think it's going to be a largely cleaned out house. I think there's going to be a lot of new faces in Ann Arbor this next year. I would wager that if someone is kept, and I'm pretty sure this is what will happen, Tony Alford of the running backs coach, who was previously at Ohio State, he's done a remarkable job there, done an equally good job in Ann Arbor. I think he would be probably number one with a bullet among the coaches to keep on this staff. And then anyone else on the offensive side, I mean, Michigan already lost its offensive coordinator to Missouri, Chip Lindsey, and obviously there's rumors and sounds like Michigan is moving towards Jason Beck, the offensive coordinator at Utah, to come join him on staff here. So that would sort of help with that. I don't know if anyone else on offense would stay. I think defense would largely be cleaned out as well. Obviously, they're targeting BYU's defensive coordinator, Jay Hill. This is all very early on, so you don't know how it'll shake out. If there was one defensive coach, maybe Lou Esposito, the defensive line coach. He's done a very good job with that line, and his son is committed to the program. Not that that's a reason to keep a coach around for one commit, but if there was someone on the defensive side, I think Lou would probably be my number one candidate.
Do you think that a lot of the staff has to be put together before an official announcement comes? I would think that Michigan wants to gets this thing announced as soon as they can to get on the track of people looking like they're making some moves to clean up some stuff.
Yeah, no, the staff certainly does not need to be put together in order to make that announcement. I was hearing it could come as early as today, like sometime in the next hour. It feels like now we're getting closer and closer to the end of that. But Michigan is pretty notorious for the 5 o'clock news dump on Friday. And we are 45 minutes. I'm sure you guys know how that drill goes. Yeah. So we are T-minus 45 away from that. Normally it's about 4:50 when that happens. So I'll be on my phone at that time. It could come late tonight. I mean, Michigan's traveling down to Orlando today, the team. And so they're flying to Orlando for their Citrus Bowl. There are just a ton of moving parts. I'm hearing that Kyle Whittingham is going to join them on this trip. Sounds like he might need to fly out to Vegas first and say some things to his team that he just left and was going to coach as the interim, and then he's headed down to Orlando. That's what I'm hearing. That's not official, but no, the staff does not need to be together in order to make this hire official.
That's pretty wild. We're keeping an eye on it, of course, on our end here in Utah. And Tony Garcia, Detroit Free Press, she covers the University of Michigan football and basketball, and exciting times. And breaking news never sleeps, even during the holidays, Tony. So we appreciate you jumping on here and hanging out with us, and enjoy it. And we'll probably dip back in again at some point after everything becomes official over the next couple of weeks here. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
There you go, Tony Garcia. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that line on Kyle.
He's going to probably fly out to Vegas first to say goodbye to the team. It's like,
yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I think he can send a text.
Can you imagine Kyle being hired by Michigan and
going out to? Game? I mean, look, I don't want to speak for him. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know what his feelings are about the whole thing.
No, I'm sure he would love to.
But especially if he has to I mean, if
you don't
the
think Kyle
rumors,
Whittingham would love to be there, Coach? I'm sure he would.
I
Absolutely.
love this. Getting the other side, just a couple little extra things when Tony Garcia just tells us, yeah, it sounds like I've heard that Kyle Whittingham is going to make that trip down to Orlando with the Michigan team, or to meet up with the team down in Michigan.
Anybody else in Orlando?
Hans Olsen.
Who else? Anybody else? Another team?
All of BYU and all of.
Wow, isn't that nice? Is there anybody that he's looking to take from that staff?
I think Brent Key's got some guys that he's really honing in on that Georgia Tech team.
Anybody else on that staff that he might be? I don't know, wanting to talk to. Not that he couldn't.
Listen, that's why the trip. That's why the trip to Orlando makes a lot of sense. Yeah, say hi to the team that you may be the head coach of. Also, I don't know, make a little meetup happen. I'll meet you at Harry Potter World.
Well, if you do that, you will run into Hans Olsen.
Oh yeah, I'll be in the Slytherin house. Okay, just say the password and we'll chat. Jay Hill, come on. Things are wild, man. It's getting even more crazy. So that even just those little tidbits, pretty fascinating to see. And yeah, you have to wonder if the moving parts of the Bryce Underwood thing's interesting, but it's not. I mean, these players, it doesn't matter. Like, Devin Dampier could easily leave the University of Utah and go over to Michigan. He could easily leave and go to ASU because we've heard that. His high school coaches down there. I'm sure Kenny Dillingham would love to be the disruptor of that situation and get him out of Utah. But all the moving parts that go along with this. And, yeah, on top of all of it, you've got a BYU-Georgia Tech bowl game tomorrow that's going to be affected immediately by it. There's no way that people are going to pretend like this thing is happening. Kalani, the amount of questions that he's going to wish he never has to hear during the bowl game. I'm just here to talk about the bowl game. I mean, I already know what it sounds like.
Once he had this whole deal done after the Penn State thing, everything was
we
done.
thought it too. We're out there.
We're clean. Unscathed. I got all my coaches. I got more money. We got, more NIL. Like, we're golden.
Yeah, and how things change. And I said it too. And I know for a fact that BYU fans felt amazing about getting Kalani long term, but part of that deal of getting Jay Hill paid and keeping hhim on was such a huge part of that. That was a huge part of a sigh of relief coming out of the BYU camp, out of BYU fans, out of their administrators. All of the headache that Brian Santiago had running up to that moment has returned today. I guarantee it. He is wringing those hands. I guarantee he's in Orlando. I guarantee they're trying to figure out how this thing is going down. If they're not sitting down and having serious discussions with Jay Hill right now, and I've had a few people reach out and go, I thought he couldn't move laterally. I thought that was part of his clause. He couldn't have a lateral move. He had to take a head coaching job. Money talks. And I'm not saying that Jay Hill will just throw everything away. What I will say is that Michigan will throw whatever they need to into the work so that they could make this thing happen for Kyle Whittingham. And Michigan fans have no idea. They don't know Kyle Whittingham from Adam. They know his name. Fine, great. They have no clue who Jay Hill is. And if he ends up being the defensive coordinator there, they're out to find out that they have a shot at a national championship by those two names alone. I'm still out. The jury's still out for me on a 1-year Jason Beck success that he had. I think it's awesome, and I know that Whit loves that style. That's why he's taking him. If he does, he loves that style. Run the ball 2.5 to 1 times of throwing it. Right. Keep that ball on the ground.
Yep.
Give me 240 yards on the ground every game. He wants to see it, and as ESPN is now reporting, it's expected to be a finalized deal today. And because they're on Eastern time there in Ann Arbor, I would assume
it's going to happen at 5.
I would assume in the next few minutes or in the next half hour to 45 minutes, we may hear something solidified there. But, Pete Thamel's on right now on ESPN talking about this whole thing. And obviously so many families are going to be affected by this, from
We've
the coaching
talked about
trees.
the all day long, from the ripple effect / dominoes that this will have across Utah and BYU. Like, it will be felt. I mean, BYU, granted, they were able to retain everybody, with after that Penn State thing, but that doesn't mean things change.
Yeah,
and it feels like, without Jay Hill, like that deep, I'll just say, if you don't have Jay Hill running that defense, they are not playing in the Big 12 championship game. I don't think so.
I don't either. Well, at least for
That's
the
a different
short
team.
term. Yeah,
That's a different team. That doesn't mean somebody else can't step in, but that's how big of a deal Jay Hill is on that. The importance of Jay Hill for BYU.
The difficulty of this time of year that this becomes is the recruiting timeline. The transfer portal opens up on the 2nd. Yes, you've got commits that are chatting with all these coaches at the right now, and they've committed to those coaches right now, and they may not be in place. We're hearing some potential details on this deal. Pete Thamel just said it was a possible 5-year deal for Kyle Whittingham. Any guesses on the money? I mean, we haven't seen it yet, but I bet they're going to have to be above the $10 million mark. That's the new watermark, I think, for coaches. I think they're going to have to be north of $10 million a year. And so I think you're going to see like a 5-year, 55-ish million type of a deal for Kyle Whittingham. If Pete Thamel is reporting true about a 5-year possible deal of Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan, as now ESPN's just, they're full on just diving head into this thing, and Kyle Whittingham going to Michigan seems like it's not just a done deal. It seems like the finalizing of it is going to happen probably within the next hour here. So we'll keep you up to date.
What a wild day after.
Isn't that? Yeah. Oh, listen. No, this will go down in the annals of remember that time?
Yep,
we were all at home.
Is.
I was eating that stuff out of my stocking from the day before, and then Lloyd goes, "What are you doing the rest of today?" And I go, "I'm free. What's Kyle Whittingham doing?" Looks like he'll be heading to Michigan. That's the report. And now the possibility of a possible 5-year deal we're hearing. If I'm going to guess, it's going to be north of $10 million a year for Kyle Whittingham. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. If you are Michigan and you want to be playing with the big boys, the type of money that draw people away. Lane Kiffin is getting about $13 million to go to LSU per year. Lincoln Riley 5 years ago was $10 million a year. And so I think the going rate just keeps going up and up and up, and you're going to see Michigan open up those pocketbooks, and they are willing. They aren't just paying for Kyle Whittingham; they're paying for a full PR overhaul of that program, and they'll get it with Kyle Whittingham if that ends up being the case. Let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back because I know we're anticipating Mitch Harper coming on with us, the BYU insider for KSLSports.com. They, of course, have the Pop-Tarts Bowl tomorrow in Orlando, so very appropriate that the trip that Michigan takes to Orlando down to the Citrus Bowl works out just fine if you're wanting to have a quick meeting with anybody on that BYU staff down there in Orlando if you are the brand new head coach of Michigan. But we'll see how that thing goes down. We'll ask Mitch what the fallout could look like with that, not just in this bowl game tomorrow, because I think it's going to be an absolute mess in terms of the amount of headspace that's going to be dedicated for these players as to what the future looks like. If Jay Hill leaves, the amount of people that you'd see leave that BYU program, not even just from a staff standpoint, but from a player standpoint, I think would be a lot. You don't think you'd see Jay Glasker in a Michigan navy blue and yellow wearing that number 16? I'm just throwing it out there. You're going to see a lot of people, at least, who are going to be looked at as that possibility as well. Satawala. Oh, man. He's a local guy, though. Annapolis, he's not going to go to Michigan. The thing is when Michigan comes calling, that's a pretty big deal. So we'll see how that thing goes. But we'll chat with Mitch Harper in just a few minutes here. We'll come back. We're also anticipating chatting with Josh Furlong. He's also one of our Ute insiders, KSL Sports, and we'll get his thoughts on this one too, get his angle on how to approach this thing, and hopefully in the next maybe less than an hour, we're anticipating possibly a news dump of Kyle Whittingham being officially named the head coach at the University of Michigan. We'll see if that happens. We'll take a break. We'll come back. More to go. Mitch Harper next with us, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
I'm a free agent. I'm in the transfer portal. So yeah, it's a different feel, but like I said, I'm at peace, and I did not want to be that guy that overstayed his welcome and people just saying, hey, when's this guy going to leave? That was not my intention ever, and I hope I didn't do that. I'm sure with some people I did do that, but to me the timing is right. I don't know if it's ever out of your system. I mean, it's in your blood, and so I don't know about that. Not that being said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but it's when you got the coaching in your blood, it just doesn't go away.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Alex, Kirry, Lloyd, Cole, Alex Napolis coming in and hitting the buttons here live for us and, frankly, doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes producing for us to get you through what has become one of the biggest days in Utah sports history, not just the University of Utah sports history, but I think overall, Lloyd, we've been talking about how big of a deal this is, how far-reaching a possible deal like this is, and ESPN is reporting that the Kyle Whittingham to Michigan deal is almost totally done. We've even heard a 5-year term possibly on that contract. We don't know any other details. We don't have anything totally confirmed, but we just had Tony Garcia on from the Detroit Free Press, and he was like, yeah, it's not just like a close to done deal. It looks like he might end up in Orlando hanging out with the Michigan Wolverines for the Citrus Bowl. I don't know if you know this, but BYU is playing also in the city of Orlando in their bowl game tomorrow, the Pop-Tarts Bowl coming up. And man, I can't think about how much of a big deal. These bowl games are already hard to tell these players to get excited about, Lloyd.
Did you see Pete Thamel's latest, the updated?
What's the update?
Well, did you put a number out there? Sorry.
I said 5 years possibly, and I said maybe 50-ish million, 55-ish million. Possibly, because I can't imagine him going for less than $10 million a year.
Probably 50
because
to 60.
that's like
I'm not seeing a number on it.
That's like the going rate, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe a little more. Maybe it's 60. I mean,
Pete Thamel saying Kyle Whittingham has this is the update, has agreed to a 5-year deal to become Michigan's next head coach.
So, what those numbers will end up being, what that'll end up finalizing to look like, we're staying on top of it here because we anticipate as it's about 4:30 Eastern, just past 4:30 Eastern time. If it approaches that 5 o'clock time frame, the closer we get to that, I think the more likely we're going to get a news dump on a Friday after Christmas on this job. But Michigan, I'm sure, wants to get it announced as soon as possible.
I love this business.
Oh, it's fun. And these days are even more fun. And the overreaching part, or the part that extends into a lot of these teams and a lot of the names out there, Jay Hill has been floated out there as the top name being pursued possibly for that defensive coordinator spot if Kyle Whittingham does indeed get that deal tied up officially today. Joining us on the program right now, he is our BYU insider for KSLSports.com. Mitch Harper, I would anticipate you've been watching this with a close eye and wondering the same thing we all have been wondering. What does that mean for this BYU team if Jay Hill does end up leaving the program from that defensive coordinator spot? Is that even a possibility? I've heard people say, no, he can't. His contract says he can't. I feel like contracts don't matter these days.
They don't. And it's definitely – a possibility. And, Jay Hill, when I talked to him earlier this year about his relationship with Kyle Whittingham, he got even held back emotion a little bit and pointed to how much of an impact Kyle Whittingham has had on, Jay Hill's life, not only as a football player in the past and a coach, but just a man, and acknowledge, Whittingham's family and the impact that they've had. So and you look at, the possibility of Jay Hill going to Michigan, he would become a media darling in the college football coaching carousel as the next big thing to hire in coaching. For whatever reason, BYU and Utah programs, it's funny when you look at all this coaching carousel and, BYU and Utah were not deemed as programs good enough to be in the playoff, yet these Big Ten programs can't get enough of these two coaching staffs and wanting to rate them. Potentially. But, I think that Jay Hill would be, if he has success at Michigan, which I would expect he would because he's just good wherever he is, he'd be in line to maybe get a SEC Big Ten coaching job, and, you think of this coaching carousel, there was thought of, maybe he could be a candidate for Colorado State. Well, and there was, talks even before he got to BYU when he was the Weber State coach that he was maybe in the mix for the Arizona job. It's a different tier of coaches that if you have success at Michigan. And I think, these athletic departments try to get, a splashy hire that's proof of avoiding risk and the profile, the resume that just inspires boosters and donors. And you're getting a Michigan DC that has success in the Big Ten and maybe knocks off an Ohio State that just looks a little more glamorous to some than, say, the guy that's leading BYU. And even though, again, is that fair? No, because we know how good a football is played in this state. I think the country is realizing it by these coaching moves that are taking place and the interest that these two staffs get. But, I think definitely. And Jay Hill is someone that, I think the question's always been with Jay Hill is what are his motives? What does he want after his health scare with his heart attack last year? Does he want to ultimately get to a head coaching position? I think he's an ultimate competitor, and he's going to get to the highest ranks of the position. Kalani was asked today, in his press conference, if he expected to retain all of his coaches now with the new enhanced resources he's getting, and he kind of, danced around that question and said it can't be a fortune teller, but guys are going to become head coaches one day. He wants that to happen. And I think this could maybe give Jay Hill, if that's what it ends up being, maybe the best scenario to get a premier job rather than just simply these, Mountain West Pac-12 jobs that he gets sometimes linked to. He could really go get something big potentially if this ends up playing that way.
Mitch, has the Crumble owner, in fact, gotten off the sideline again and ready to get to work to keep Jay Hill? Can you confirm that, Mitch?
No, I can't confirm specifically on the Crumble guy, but
okay. I'm just curious. I just want to know: have we seen anything on social that he's gotten out there and he's it's time for him to get off the sideline and get to work?
Well, BYU definitely got off the sideline and went to work for Kalani and this whole staff, and Jay Hill's got a great spot, and he does at BYU, and I think there'd have to be a real decision, but I think also, again, the respect that he has for Whittingham, Michigan, if that becomes the offer for him, it'd be hard to turn that down. And, but at the same time, I think BYU, I think fans would get fearful because then they think, it's just going to revert back to what it was pre-Jay Hill. And that, that was a mess at the end there in 2022. They were the worst defense, arguably, in college football 3 years ago before entering the Big 12. But you'd like to think that Kalani Sitake, armed with stability, and greater resources, can really go make a big splash. And Kalani's always been big on he wants a defensive coordinator that is completely aligned with what he wants from the defense. Before with Tuiaki, he had a limited budget to work with, and he was trying to develop and teach Tuiaki how he wants the defense to run. Even though Tuiaki worked with him at Utah, he was trying to teach him into being a defensive coordinator. Jay Hill, it was hit the ground running, give him full autonomy to go run that thing. Kalani's got guys on his defensive staff. I would look at General Guilford, if Jay Hill was to leave, as that guy. General Guilford's been on the staff every step of the way for a decade now since Kalani, took this job, and Jay Hill's promoted Gennaro. He retained Gennaro, one of the only carryovers from the previous staff with Jay Hill. And when it comes to alignment with what Kalani expects out of the defense, General Guilford checks a lot of boxes to me on that. But also at the same time, Kalani's got the resources now to go out and go get someone. This is no longer just, like a couple, year and a half ago when BYU lost Mark Pope, the fan base panicked and thought all was lost and it was doomsday scenario. They got better. And BYU, with its resources, what they've shown with basketball, what they've shown retaining Kalani Sitake, you would like to think that they can still be at a place where they're very successful. Will there be attrition if Jay Hill left? Absolutely, because there's a lot of guys on this roster that love playing for Jay Hill. But at the same time, like BYU's in a position to also replenish the roster. It's no longer the BYU of old where it's like you lose someone and all is lost and you can't recuperate. You've got the head coach in place, and he's made it clear he wants to be at BYU for the rest of his career. And so, if that happened, it's just interesting how you bring up, like the possibility of Whittingham being in Orlando and Kalani's down there, Jay Hill's down there. My goodness, these two kids BYU and Utah just can't break off from one another. But it's just part of the machine. BYU's been better at retention with retaining staff, probably better than most. Kalani's done a really good job of really having no coaching changes since they joined the Big 12. And if it does happen that way, I think that there's options internally to keep. But at the same time, like, no one would fault Jay Hill if he actually took an opportunity at Michigan and to work with Kyle Whittingham, a guy that he truly views as maybe like a mentor. Like, you're looking at someone that probably looks at Whittingham the way that Kalani looked at Lavelle. So it's a big deal, and no one could fault that. And to do it possibly at Michigan, that's a big time opportunity, and a place that has won national titles just this handful of years ago. So, but BYU, you just like to think again that they're in a spot with their enhanced commitment from the guys like Crumble and the boosters that BYU has, and the athletic department that's really aggressive under Brian Santiago. They're just not going to be flat-footed and look like they're not going to be able to recoup and respond. Because Kalani Sitake, what we've learned over his 10 years, whenever there's adjustments made, BYU tends to get better. Now, would it be tough to replace Jay Hill? Absolutely. But BYU, under Kalani, has done a good job of always retooling the staff if needed to do that.
Mitch, from a player's perspective, you brought up the roster, and there'd be attrition, of course, but who do you look at and go, oh, that guy, he would totally be out the door really quickly? I mean, I think that the big names people look at and they go, okay, it's not just that they'd go there. They could possibly go to Michigan and make an impact next year and put themselves on the map to go to the NFL. All these things become attractive. Who are some of those names that you'd look at and go, yeah, watch out for this person?
I'd look at someone like a Faletau Satuala. And I think when you look at this sort of dynamic, if Jay Hill was to go to Michigan, you look at guys that maybe are not BYU lifers, guys that maybe went to BYU for a position coach, because remember, Jay Hill coaches the safeties at BYU along with being the defensive coordinator and the associate head coach. Satuala picked BYU over Utah. On the heels of a 5-7 season for BYU, he really bought into the vision of Jay Hill, and he's someone that would project next year to be one of BYU's faces of the program next season, especially on the defensive side. And he'd be someone that you'd look at and say, that could be a guy that would leave and follow Jay Hill. Other guys like Hunter Clegg, a defensive end who once signed with Utah, flipped to BYU after the mission. And, but he's someone that really is, grounded in his faith, coming back from a mission, loves the BYU experience. And that's what's interesting about BYU. And a lot of the talk about the culture of the last few years, how much does that get tested? Because if the culture really is in as great of a spot as what we've seen on the field results, you would like to think that they want to stay part of that culture. And with a reported enhanced NIL budget and rev share nearing the cap at $20.5 million, you're going to make nice money playing at BYU. So regardless of who the coach DC is, you will make a nice lump of money as a player on BYU's defense and BYU's roster, period. So, I think that's what's interesting is, like, I look across the board because you think also Jack Kelly, but he's already gone. His eligibility is expired. The cornerbacks with Trey Alexander and Evan Johnson, those are players that are Gennaro Guilford guys, and they really committed to Gennaro. And would they stay if Gennaro's the new DC? I would think so. Or whatever direction BYU goes. So, but Faletau Satuala would be the one that would probably make the most sense. That would seem like a Jay Hill guy going to follow him potentially if Jay Hill ends up going to Michigan, potentially with Kyle Whittingham.
Mitch, when you see kind of these things go down, and obviously one of the more interesting pieces of all this is also that Michigan is playing in Orlando in the Citrus Bowl next week. I would anticipate that there might be, how much does this just interrupt the next 24 hours for BYU, who at this time tomorrow will be probably ending the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And I can't imagine it's not, at the very least, a massive distraction. But how do you think that gets handled?
I got to imagine it's something that is not ideal because guys like a Satuala, who are some of your key guys on the back end of the defense, are they now maybe thinking of their next stops after what it looks like 24 hours from now? It's not ideal. This whole bowl prep for BYU, it was easy to rip Notre Dame for their decision, but in many respects, it would not have been the worst thing. Now, I know Kalani Sitake would never entertain that idea. He loves the bowl practices, and there's value. I mean, there's some young guys at the cornerback position in particular that have really progressed in this bowl practice on the defensive side, and some younger talent that there's a kind of a feeling that they could be really key factors, maybe in 2026 and beyond for BYU. But it's just a big distraction. It's a game where, this Pop-Tarts Bowl between BYU and Georgia Tech, hard to really identify who's the more motivated team in this one. Last year, Alamo Bowl, you just got the sense that BYU was just super motivated and ready to really silence Colorado and all the talk about the Buffs. And then there's been years past where it was, BYU clearly not motivated for an Independence Bowl and UAB rocks them. This one, hard to get a sense. Georgia Tech, both BYU and Tech, just kind of, I feel like Tech's a little more motivated, but still, I think it's a little bit of a lackluster finish for them too. This is a game that's hard to kind of gauge as to what to reasonably expect. And then on top of it all, you don't have LJ Martin, who's going to have a decision after this game with deciding whether he wants to go to the NFL or come back to BYU for 2026. It's not ideal. And this calendar is not great for college football, because any sort of changes that happen, it just naturally is going to lead to these players probably being distracted, having their agents hit them up and say, in this situation, if this coach leaves or this guy goes here, hey, this could be a landing spot for you. That was happening when there was rumblings about Kalani possibly going to Penn State. And, that distraction and the players' agents hitting them up about plan Bs if this happens. So it's just not ideal. It's not a typical work week. I mean, this entire week, you're seeing the players go to Disney World, Universal, all this stuff. Like, again, you're thinking, there's a football game? Like, my feet are dead after Disneyland. How the heck are you playing football after 48 hours after this? But so it's again, not ideal. And we'll see how BYU fares less than 24 hours from now.
Pretty wild. Mitch Harper, our BYU insider for KSLSports.com. Obviously, this is going to affect every program in the state if the dominoes fall as we think that they may, or as we certainly pictured that they could. Mitch, thanks for jumping on in short notice, and we'll keep an eye on everything going down here. And if anything breaks, obviously, you'll be able to keep us up to date. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You bet, guys. Take care.
There you go. Mitch Harper. What's interesting about this is that now I've got somebody being like, oh, you got to make it about BYU. I was like, oh, no. Listen, this entire football – look, I can't tell how many times in this past year, Lloyd, we've been talking about this and the possibility of the things that have gone down as sorry, I'm reading this on the screen as ESPN just did another breaking news hit here, and they're saying that Kyle Whittingham has agreed to a 5-year deal, according to Dan Wetzel and Pete Thamel. We're just waiting for something official to come down from Big Blue. But we'll see how this thing goes down. Anyway, we keep talking about how the state of sport in this state, football in particular, for the big programs, has never been better. And unfortunately, I think days like this, we talked about it, by the way, on where you're going. I know where you're going. Yeah. We just had a season unlike any other we've seen, where Utah and BYU had the seasons that they both had. BYU in a Big 12 title game, Utah right there, and had a real shot at the Big 12 championship game as well. Like, this was a phenomenal season locally for the local teams, for your two big hitters in Utah. Yeah, and look, Kyle Whittingham walking away from the program, that obviously that would be an immediate hit, but you knew that was coming at some point. Like, we knew that Kyle Whittingham was not going to be long for this job at Utah, and so we talked about how this thing could go. I don't think we ever saw this happening. And I honestly wonder how much of this is born from the idea of Kyle Whittingham maybe feeling like he wasn't just forced out, but that it just didn't go down like he would have wanted it to. That he wasn't the one making the decision. I think that's a huge part for him. He's just not one of these guys that wants to have somebody else, after 21 years at the helm at Utah, that somebody else goes, thanks, we'd love to see you go off in the distance. Like, no, don't make me be that guy. I'll leave. I'm stepping down. But by the way, I'm not done coaching, and so I would appreciate it if you guys, whatever advisory role you had for $1 million a year that was worked into his contract, I don't want to be under that anymore. So let's make that right. maybe put a buyout together of some sort so that I can be totally detached and a quote-unquote free agent. We heard that term. Into the transfer portal. He used that term. How many jokes did he make during that press conference? And we all went, ha, ha, ha. That's hilarious. Well, interesting. I wonder what that's going to look like. And then here it is, less than 2 weeks later, and it looks like it's coming to fruition, and Kyle Whittingham's likely going to take that Michigan job.
While some people in that scrum laughed and thought it was super funny, I think everybody, for the most part, their ears perked up and be like, okay.
It was the awkward laugh. It was the scared laugh.
Yeah.
No.
It was like, okay, he's not done. He's ready to go. And the message that was put out in the press release, that Friday before at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is that he did not retire. It was he stepped down, and that whole thing, by the way, I keep thinking about that, and I'm like, that has sat really awkwardly with me. Like as I think about it, it's like, no, if people are like, well, he retired. Trust me, he was retiring. He did not retire. He does not want to retire.
Lloyd, I think he wants
to
play. He wants to play golf in Hawaii with his grandkid. Like we had all sorts of versions of how we thought that Kyle Whittingham. Oh, I already know how this is going to go. He's going to retire. He's going to move to Hawaii. Oh, he's going to take all the grandkids on a cruise. Oh, he wants to be with his grandkids. He would never uproot his family like that. And at one point, I mean, PK talked about it last week quite a bit. It's just like if the Dillingham stuff would have gone down, Whit would have definitely considered that ASU job.
Yeah.
If you think that's wrong, then just look at what today brought you. That should be the indicator of how he would have looked at, and it didn't matter that it was in conference. It doesn't matter that it was, a guy that, these coaches look at, and it doesn't matter that these coaches have quote unquote loyalties, because at some point Kyle Whittingham probably felt, well, I have been loyal, and this didn't feel like a loyal situation of how I got put down the road here. And I'm not saying that there was a massive slight, but I think that Kyle Whittingham, if he wants to find a way to be slighted in the situation, he could easily make that happen. I think
it's what drives him. By the way, being slighted is what drives him.
Put something on the shoulder.
Him.
Yeah,
and by the way, there was another gem in that Tony Garcia interview, the Michigan beat writer. He mentioned about how his essentially Kyle Whittingham's people had reached out.
Right. That they
had reached out.
They said, "Hey, he's interested."
He's interested. Yes.
He said a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
He said a couple of weeks ago. That's exact. I didn't think about that. In the moment that he said it, I remember thinking, wow,
right away.
A couple of weeks ago, his camp reached out. You know what that is?
His camp.
You guys, you freaking get on the phone and call Michigan, because I'm not done doing this. I'm not done doing this. And now the breaking news keeps coming across the screen, and it keeps getting in bigger and bigger bolded red letters on ESPN that they have agreed to a 5-year deal, according to Pete Thamel and Wetzel. I think both of them at ESPN both were reporting that, right? So I think we're just waiting for something official to come from the University of Michigan. I almost think you don't even need it at this point. What's going to be interesting is where the dominoes fall after that and what that's going to look like as well. But a massive day here for the University of Michigan, who'd be hiring Kyle Whittingham with 177 career wins in 21 seasons, had 18 winning years, had seven double-digit win seasons, including this one, a year after going 5-7, and it just keeps getting more and more interesting.
As I just keep seeing, social media, the breaking. Former Utah head coach Kyle Whittingham has agreed to a 5-year deal to become Michigan's next head football coach.
Well, basketball would be interesting too.
Basketball would be.
That's it. So the terms of the deal, obviously, we'll find out at some point too.
It is so crazy to think.
To read that out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As I told, we mentioned we have some, people to have their phone by them. Yeah, I think we're going to have to recycle through a couple of people. This is a done deal.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay. Let's take another quick break here before we get to the break. Josh Furlong is going to join us, one of our Ute insiders for KSL Sports. Josh, of course, has been all over this. He's covered Utah for a long time for KSL, so we'll chat with him also around the corner as we're waiting for something official to come down. He's probably just waiting to hit the he's probably just waiting to hit the send button officially for that official announcement as well. So we'll talk to Josh coming up around the corner. Stay here. Lloyd Cole, Alex Kirry, and Alex Napolis here taking you through live today from the KSL Sports Studios at Broadcast House as we bring you that news that Kyle Whittingham is likely done deal according to all the sources that are involved. Kyle Whittingham headed to Michigan as the head football coach. The 22nd head football coach, by the way, at Michigan. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. More to go. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Well, like I said, I don't want to overstay my welcome. Somebody once told me that every year that goes by you're a coach, 10% of the fan base starts to hate you. And so after 20 years, they all, plus their kids or grandkids, probably hate me. So anyway, but it was a good run. It was a good run. And I'll say it one more time. I didn't want to be that hanger-oner that just kept, people just got sick of it. Well, who knows? We'll see. I guess stepping down and step away and reevaluate things and see where we're at.
Welcome back, everybody. Alex Kirry, Lloyd Cole. Welcome on into the KSL Sports Zone. Oh, we've been live for going on almost 4 hours here, Lloyd. And,
we started about, 11:30, I think it was.
Yep. Yeah, and we've been
here as quick as we could.
We've been waiting on some official word. It's been basically rolled out by every news source now across the board. We're all in agreement that not only is Kyle Whittingham agreeing to become the 22nd head coach at the University of Michigan, but a 5-year deal is likely in place, and we'll, of course, wait for that official number and official word and all those things that come down. We were hoping that maybe there'd be something in the last few minutes here because of that 5 p.m. news dump that so many sports programs like to take advantage of. But here we are.
No, they don't do that. What are you talking about?
Come on.
That's not such a thing.
Now that we look back and hearing all the rumors that this is and the reports that this is a done deal, boy, how foolish were we during that press conference to not read more into all of the things that now make so much more sense. Kyle Whittingham, number one, not doing a press conference. That should be an indicator. Like, if you go out on a good note, that press conference happens that day. Everybody high-fives each other. Jamie's there dabbing her eyes and talking about how sweet of an experience it's been. Instead, it was a totally different experience. It was Kyle Whittingham during a media scrum that felt just kind of improvised, like, yeah, I guess we got to do this now. And I'll talk about it. Yep, I am stepping down, stepping away, hitting the transfer portal, all these jokes that were made and that we awkwardly kind of looked at and went, oh, that's kind of interesting. Now, of course, it comes more into view. Somebody who's been covering this thing phenomenally. He is Josh Furlong, KSL Sports and KSL.com. You can read his byline there. And Josh, first of all, now that we hear all of these things and knew that this was going to be a possibility now in the past 24 hours, how wild is it to think that, hey, at that press conference, he was trying to tip us all off there?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because, like, this is one of those things where it wasn't kind of this linear thing, right? There was a lot of different things that happened. And so it was like the phrasing that he used of stepping down was 100% like, intentional, and there was a lot of different things that way. But even then, I don't think he had the destination of Michigan in mind, right? Like, I think this was more like he really did plan on more of a retirement, wanted to kind of step away from the game and then kind of see what his options were. And then as just this immediately kind of shifted, Michigan and Kyle Whittingham became kind of this thing. So I don't know if this was like he decided to step down and suddenly it was just like, I'm going to pursue Michigan. I think that was an option, but it's definitely something that's been crazy. And so, like, I think it's definitely changed the last few hours, few days. And so it'll be, it's been really interesting to watch because it really just didn't feel like it was going to be a legitimate thing based on kind of the conversations I'd had, the people I'd talked to. And now suddenly, like, within a 24-hour period, it really ramped up, and this became, a full-scale effort to try to get Kyle to Michigan.
Josh, as you see it play out the way it is now, do you feel like that there was something there that Utah didn't do in all this, that maybe he was not just, I think PK referred to it as being prodded out of the building. Don't want to say forced out or pushed out, but do you think that there was a little bit of a slight that he wasn't necessarily ready? He wanted to keep coaching at Utah, but they just didn't have that in mind for him?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely wanted to keep coaching, right? I think there was a feeling where, in this day and age where he expected the transfer portal to kind of change and not really be the same of him kind of attaching himself to the program as much, just because it becomes much more transactional, that absolutely changed, because it really wasn't. It became, you have some transactions and you get new players, but there was a lot more buy-in from the transfer portal than he expected. And so you kind of attach yourself to the love of the game even more, where it's just like, look, I've got Devin Dampier, I've got Bird Ficklin. I can see a path forward where, we finished 10-2 this year, but we can move forward and actually do more. And so I think there was this desire where, hey, I can do it. I can finish through my contract, which goes till 2027. There's some options there. And my understanding is the staff was partially okay with it, right? Like there wasn't any real tense feelings in terms of, Kyle, you got to get out the door. But I think the more that the university and Kyle kind of went down this path, it just realized this wasn't going to work. Utah at one point needed to kind of look to its future, being Morgan. And look, Kyle did part of this to himself in some respects by wanting Kyle and Morgan to have the head coach in waiting. And so, it's this tough situation where did Kyle make his own bed, right? Like, are you doing something where, you're not giving yourself an out now because you've named your successor, obviously trying to set him up for success, but then you wanted to hang on too long and kind of see this thing through. So it's a tough situation. I don't think it's a full force out. I think it was still kind of a mutual, but definitely more prodding, like PK said, where it's not fully the same situation of he wanted to be, done, right? Like he wanted to be done, but at the same time, he still wanted to keep coaching at the same time. It's convoluted, honestly, and that's what makes this so complicated.
I totally understand the both sides of it. Obviously, Kyle Whittingham, we get that feeling that he wasn't ready. We've talked about it ad nauseum, and I understand Utah's kind of side of it a little bit as well, where Morgan Scally, he's been in the coach in waiting. He's you probably start to hit a point where he's getting antsy. He's done an amazing job with that defense. He's starting to get. I'm sure job offers are starting to come in, getting interest from other programs as well. So there's, both sides are on a little bit of a time clock. What is the, now Morgan is, you have both sides probably, as I mentioned it earlier, I said it was kind of like, it feels like the Jerry Maguire where he's calling in, trying to keep players, and so is Bob Sugar trying to keep players, and everybody's is working, working the phone lines to keep all players, coaches, you name it. And what is on Morgan's short list? What's the important thing for Morgan Scally to do to make sure, the University of Utah is right where they need to be?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the simple answer there is just consistency, right? They've obviously built a great coaching staff. They've built a great recruiting base to be able to build off of. And if they can at least keep a majority of that, I think you're going to be okay. And that's kind of where he's going to have to focus. Obviously, it's first going to start with the coaches, because the transfer portal ultimately doesn't open until January 2nd. So you have a little bit of time, though guys can declare for that right now. But you've got to be able to make sure you've got the coaching staff there. And my understanding, too, is that Kyle's probably not going to be coaching this game in Las Vegas. And so now suddenly Morgan becomes the head coach immediately of the bowl game. And so does he name his defensive coordinator? Does he push to keep Jason Beck to be his offensive coordinator? I know Jason Beck has been rumored to go with Kyle, but I wonder if it's moving a little bit quicker to make sure that you can get some consistency there, kind of bring some stability. And so for me, there's a lot of that, right? Like Morgan has to act fast in terms of being able to keep a coaching staff together, and then you deal with the fallout of the players and everything there. The reality is Michigan, is a blue blood, right? Like we get it. Like we understand it. Like I think there's going to be players from Utah that are attractive, that are going to want to come to Utah. But at the same time, Kyle doesn't have to pull from Utah necessarily to go for the players, right? I think for me, the understanding is that there's more of a desire to pull coaches and bring in some of his staff, because Kyle's never really branched out that far with his coaching staff. He's always kind of kept it pretty inside. He's never built up this huge connection of people around the country that he wants to go to. Morgan has done a much better job of trying to be able to get involved that way. Kyle's kind of stayed pretty insulated and done it. So he's going to look at BYU. He's going to look at Utah for his coaching staffs. And so for me, the two schools here, they're going to have to play a game of fighting off, Jay Hill. They're going to have to fight off Jason Beck. There's going to be some other position coaches that you're going to have to fight off, and then you deal with the fallout after that. But that, to me, remains job one for Morgan Scally. It's now going to be the job for Kalani Sitake and BYU. It's going to be a tough situation, and I think that's the real ramifications that are going to have the biggest impact as of right now.
We talked about the BYU effect and how that would the possibility of Jay Hill leaving and going to be the DC for Kyle at Michigan. And, we've put ourselves down that road pretty quickly because, reports are saying that, but they've obviously got to figure out the coaching staff first the head coach, and then after that. But the reality is that Jay Hill and Kyle Whittingham are tied together so much and have been so much of their career. What are the odds that Jay Hill goes to Michigan, that's not just the number one guy, but that's the guy who Kyle Whittingham goes, I'm doing this because I feel like Jay Hill's going to be the guy?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this isn't just one of those things where it's like, oh, he knows Jay Hill, and obviously they have a connection. I mean, this is more deeply rooted in obviously their connection, but I think also the Kalani Sitake deal, right? You look at this where when he spurned Penn State and decided to stay at BYU, they locked him in for a long time. And I think there was many that believed that Jay Hill was going to kind of be the heir apparent there as well. Now suddenly you kind of have to look at the table and say, hey, I'm not going to be anything past a defensive coordinator for quite a while. Obviously, it's a lateral move to some extent. Obviously, it's an upgrade because you're going to a blue blood, but you're moving now into a situation where maybe there's a better path. Now you look at Jay Hill as the guy that now can orchestrate what many would feel is a Big Ten defense. You pair that with Kyle Whittingham, where they already know things. Now you get even better recruits than you've had at BYU or at Utah. You now have a path where potentially Kyle's not going to stay at Michigan forever, right? He's either going to retire or, this fizzles out and it's not a great thing. Maybe this becomes an opportunity where Jay Hill steps in, and now you've instantly increased your trajectory as a coach if it goes well, and now you could potentially take over at Michigan. You've got potential other jobs available to you because you've done it there. To me, this feels like a major, more so than even Jason Beck, Jay Hill feels like the guy that you're going to circle as number one, right? Because this just has that more of a connection, and it seems like it can work even 10 with Jay Hill.
How much pressure is now on Morgan Scally, Josh? The thing is, the way things have set up, the way that, the optics of this whole thing with Kyle Whittingham looking at whether he was pushed out or prodded, however you want to put it, doesn't really matter. But the pressure now is because if Utah goes and lays an egg next year, all of a sudden it's like, well, we had Kyle Whittingham right there, and he wanted to stay. He wanted to coach, and all of a sudden we're back to 5-7 or worse. And that's not to say that's what's going to happen, but it feels like that pressure is going to be. Not that it's not a pressure job anyways, coaching college football, but it feels like that's going to be ramped up to like a 10.
Yeah, I mean, there was always going to be pressure with him being the head coach in waiting and taking over for a legend like Kyle Whittingham. And I think that's still going to remain and maybe amp up even more. But to me, I think the biggest pressure is now on the Utah administration, because now if this doesn't work, whether it's nudged, frauded, forced out, whatever adjective we want to call, you now essentially got rid of a head coach that was a very successful coach for one that you still ultimately don't know. Now, at the end of the day, Morgan Scally has been doing a ton of the planning. He's been involved in a lot of these things for a long time, right? There really was a belief that Kyle was retiring because he had turned over a lot of the stuff to Morgan Scally. And so I don't know that there's going to be this huge wholesale change, barring he has to, bring in a whole new staff and players and that kind of stuff. But I think the pressure's still there for him. But I honestly think this comes down to more of the administration, because you do have to say, we made the right decision. We looked to the future. It paid out. Great. Michigan got another great quality head coach. And if he's committed to coaching for 5 years, so be it. But you kind of have to pair it that way. If it doesn't work, this blows up in Mark Harlan's face. And now what do you do, right? You just shoved out a legend and you didn't know what you were going to get. It's tough optics to be able to manage. And I don't know that falls more on Morgan than it does on the administration.
It's a great point.
Spot on.
Yeah. And on top of it, it just brings more focus to the fact that you may have botched it because he takes the job. And then he goes, so that he takes that job, it becomes even more like, hey, there may have been some meat on that bone. You talk about whether or not you have the right coach or not, or the best coach, I know that it was awkward. I mean, how many years? I can't tell you how many times I've played in these charity golf events, and Morgan would be there, and Coach Witt would be there, and they would talk about the coaches, and he'd be like, yeah, blah, 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 is the head coach, and then this guy's going to be taking over for me pretty soon here. And, like, it's been like that for years, Josh. We've watched them do this back-and-forth dance where they've been, kind of halfway promising it, and then it was official, and then it wasn't official anymore, and then they put it back in the contract. Everybody at some point goes, yeah, you do have to rip that Band-Aid off. The problem is when you see him go straight to not just a big program, like the winningest program in the history of college football, the most wins ever in college football, Michigan, and he goes there and then takes a bunch of people there with you. Who are some people that you're looking at and you go, I'd be worried that person would go from the staff too, not just the Jason Beck move, but also maybe some others that could be in there?
Yeah, the biggest one for me is probably Jim Harding, so the Utah's offensive line coach.
Right.
He's got a big connection to Michigan. If I'm not mistaken, his wife is from Michigan, and so that could bring you back home. I know they've built a great home here in Utah, and they love it here. But if you get an opportunity to go home and, this is an opportunity where you can recruit at a high level, especially on an offensive line where that's kind of treated as kind of the creme de la creme, that's a great opportunity. I do know, though, that Michigan does have a really solid alum that is coaching there, and so maybe there's the potential that he doesn't get there. I've had some record conversations that may lead to him potentially staying versus going. So, there's things happening, I'll say. But at the same time, he's a guy that you look at that if you lose him, where do some of these recruits go, especially Kelvin Obot, Utah's first 5-star recruit? Does he follow? I don't know if that's the case, but, Jim is probably the number one. There's potential that you could lose Lewis Powell. They've had a great connection. Mm-hmm. I do believe that Utah is going to be pretty set in their defense. A lot of them, obviously have worked with Morgan. They love Morgan. So I don't know if that's a big area where Utah is going to look or Kyle would look. But I think, it ultimately comes down to Jason Beck. It's going to come down to Jim Harding and maybe somebody else. But I think, look, if you lose them, I don't want to say it's the end of the world. It obviously would suck. Yep. It wouldn't be a great situation, but I don't know if it's the end of the world. You can find guys, they've built people up. Isaac Asiata could, in theory, take over as an offensive line coach. There's options. It would just be a much bigger hurdle for Morgan to step up to in his first season. So there's that. Obviously, there's other guys at BYU that are going to have an impact there as well. But, I'm not as connected there to understand some of those things. But I think it would still be a situation where he's going to look at both of these programs and he's going to try to pull the best people that he knows and try to get them in with him.
Josh Furlong, you can read his byline at KSLSports.com, and you can read him over at KSL.com. And Josh does a phenomenal job covering the Utes. Has done it for a lot of years. Now what, from the standpoint just like of this next week as they head to Vegas for the Vegas Bowl? The reports are that Kyle is going to be going down there to talk to the team about it and then likely heading out of town to join Michigan down in Orlando for their Citrus Bowl appearance. What have you heard of that? And how does this impact like the immediate, like how this team performs in this bowl game? Good news is Nebraska is more of a messy buddy on the planet. So in the end, it might not necessarily matter from the end of the game standpoint, but what are you hearing about how they're going to handle this thing with the coaching at the Vegas Bowl?
Yeah, I think it plays out exactly like you said. I think Michigan wants Kyle to be at the bowl game, their bowl game, wants them to be acclimated to the program, gets there. So it's in all likelihood that Kyle has coached his last game as a member of the Utah program. And so you will have, Morgan Skelly taking over officially as head coach. That wasn't supposed to happen until the new year, but it looks like this will be his first full game. So to me, this feels kind of, I don't know if loyalty is the right word, but I think this could be a situation where maybe there are some players that were more loyal to Kyle, and maybe that puts them in more of a funk going into this game. But I do believe that a majority of the players and the coaching staff have all rallied around Morgan. This is the guy that they love. They knew that this was going to happen. So I don't know that there's going to be necessarily anything that changes other than now kind of that big motivating factor of, hey, we want to win one for the guy as he goes out. So, talking to him last week, a lot of the players said that. Like, they talked about wanting to send Kyle Whittingham out with a win. does that change the optics now of where this becomes just another meaningless bowl, or is this now another rallying cry for Morgan and saying, hey, let's go out on a high note for him and kind of start his career out on a better path. So, look, there's a lot of motivating factors you can have here. Bowl games are always tough to gauge, but I don't think there's any shortage of situations where you can find motivation, but I think you can also find ways to kind of take yourself out of this too based on the news and the distractions. So as if Vegas isn't a distraction alone.
I know.
So, look, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be entertaining. Instead of seeing Kyle out the last time, you maybe get your first opportunity at Morgan. So, it's still a great opportunity for the fans that are traveling. It's just gonna be a different one.
Do you think, Josh, are we going to hear from, I guess, Mark Harlan anytime soon? You think right now, I mean, the more you don't hear from Mark Harlan, it just feels like
people are going to want answers for sure.
Yeah, people want answers, and they wanted answers. They got the answers on the whole, private equity thing before this whole thing went down with the following Friday with Kyle Whittingham, but. I feel like people want to hear from Mark Harlan, and do you think that happens anytime soon?
I don't. I mean, just kind of the conversations that I've had with different people. I don't think Utah likes to stick its neck out there in these types of things. They like to just let it run its course. With that said, this would be a perfect time to do that. At the very least, it's supporting Morgan and giving him kind of. If he's already got his staff, somewhat laid out, it's moving with that quickly and giving him the support that he needs. That way, maybe before the bowl game to say, hey, Colton Swan's going to be the DC or this guy's going to be that. Like, if they can maybe give that I feel like gives much more of a steadying of the ship type thing. I quite honestly, I don't know that you're going to hear from Mark Harlan on this. I would be very surprised, let's say. So I think Utah's just going to let it run its course. It's going to be, this is a Michigan thing. We handle what we have. We already have our head coach. We don't really have to worry about what Kyle does. But, it definitely would be something to hear publicly why the administration felt the need that they did. And I don't know that we're going to get that on a public level.
Josh Furlong. Josh, we appreciate it, man. As always, always on top of anything University of Utah athletics related. Josh, thanks for the updates. And, man, we're going to try to wrap our heads around this thing. And I know when it goes official, it's going to be even more bonkers. So we appreciate it, man. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
There you go. Josh Furlong. Yeah, Mark Harlan's going to have some splaining to do.
Yeah, and you know what? Him saying what he did about the coaching staff, obviously Michigan players are – They have the pick of the litter when it comes to recruits.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily. Don't get me wrong. There will be that 5-star he mentioned about that they just got offensive lineman, their first 5-star ever.
Mm-hmm.
I could totally see that being something. Maybe somebody like and I only thought of it because I saw Will Snowden quote tweet the news or whatever, and like, wow, what a big hire for Michigan. It's like, oh well, maybe Smith Snowden, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know how much Smith have another 2 years.
I think he does.
Close to 2. Yeah.
Obot,
Kelvin Obot. That's the 5-star lineman.
Yeah, they have. Michigan has the pick of the litter, so I don't know how much they're taking as far as players, but staff, absolutely.
Yeah,
they are going to be looking at staff, and it's guys who Kyle Whittingham's comfortable. We've talked about it. His inner circle is very tight, and so. That he will look at Utah and BYU, and like we've said it all day long, it'll be a domino.
Well, we're going to take another break here, and then we'll come back. I think
we're still working on some.
We've still got some stuff.
Yeah,
let's take a quick break because I think we have some more folks we want to talk to about this. Get involved, and we're still waiting for the official word. I mean, it's one of those things where it's a done deal, but it's not because we're in the news business and we don't want to say that it's a done deal until it's actually officially a deal. So.
Hey, not normal. I'm on the other side of the glass working this stuff, and now on this side of the glass trying to work.
Trying to do both. That's fine. That's fine. We'll take a quick break here. We'll come back and we'll get you wrapped up with this news, and we'll get you some more insights here, as many as we can get, walking up to the official announcement of Kyle Whittingham. So we'll see. More to go around the corner. Kyle Whittingham is poised to be the next head football coach at Michigan. Sources reporting it's a 5-year deal. We'll have to find out more information about it, but when it becomes official, you'll hear it right here on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Well, like I said, I don't want to overstay my welcome. Somebody once told me that every year that goes by you're a coach, 10% of the fan base starts to hate you. And so after 20 years, they all, plus their kids and grandkids, probably hate me. So anyway, but it was a good run. It was a good run. And I'll say it one more time. I didn't want to be that hanger-oner that just kept, people just got sick of it.
Oh, for all those folks out there who wanted Kyle Whittingham out the door, careful what you wish for, because it's not just about sending him out the door. What makes it different, Lloyd Cole, is sending him out the door when he was ready to coach for a longer period of time, sending him out the door when he wasn't ready to be done, and now Kyle Whittingham is set to become the next head coach of the University of Michigan, according to all these sources that are involved now. It's gotten to the point now where that we even have heard tale of a timeline, a possible 5-year deal. Deal that, according to all these other sources, also is in the books, ready to go. I don't know. These days, you got to sign around the DocuSign, right? Could do all that virtually. Come on. Send the DocuSign over. I'll have my people sign it. Let's take a look at it. You go through there. You hit the old initial button. It's fine. So Kyle Whittingham looking likely that he's going to become Michigan's 22nd head coach officially at the end of today. So what does that mean? Well, it means that from all the sources that we've heard, and I think we chatted with Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press who mentioned something about this, and I kind of was like, no way, because the idea was, hey, Kyle Whittingham will be headed to Las Vegas to reveal the idea of him being the head coach of the University of Michigan, and then he'll head out to Orlando and won't coach, and it'll be officially the first time Morgan Scalley will be the head coach at the University of Utah. It'll be for the bowl game, but whether or not that was, I was wondering too. It might have been because they were just heading down the road. I mean, that was it. They're flying out to Vegas, or they're already in Vegas, and he was going to address the team and then fly out to Orlando. So that's the kind of timeline I think that people are looking at. And maybe they're waiting for him to have that discussion with the team, and then they'll make it official. I doubt it, just because these days, once the news gets leaked to the level that it has been, then I think a lot of these programs just go, hey, look, let's rip the Band-Aid off here, get the press release ready. And if you're Michigan, you can't wait to send that press release out about something non-scandal related. In fact, it's the exact opposite. You've got a guy who comes with no scandals in Kyle Whittingham. You got a guy who comes along, as somebody pointed out earlier in the day, hey, I just checked Kyle Whittingham's Instagram. He only follows his wife and daughters and hasn't posted in 10 years. I think we're good. I think that's phenomenal. It's a great way to look at it. That might be the reverse way of doing the investigatory work on a background. You're like, I want to see no posts from you in the back. I want to see zero interaction with fans. I don't want you.
You haven't posted in 10 years. Perfect. You're perfect. You're hired.
Jamie is your number one follow on Instagram. Perfect. We don't have to worry about you. And I think that that's a huge part of it. We chatted with Tony Garcia earlier from the Detroit Free Press, and he goes, that's so much of this deal is that they just have to get in the clear on how they look with this whole thing. Joining us on the program right now, Frank Dolce, live with us. Nice to join us, Frank, on short notice. Quite a day here, as it's now almost official that Kyle Whittingham is going to be the next head coach of Michigan football. What do they get with Kyle Whittingham?
Well, they get someone who understands how to build a football program based on foundational principles, based on what I think Big Ten football is all about, in terms of blue-collar kind of work ethic, win at the line of scrimmage, run the football, play devastating defensive football, and without, like you guys were talking about, without any of the nonsense. I mean, he's completely 100% focused on football, on his players, on creating an atmosphere for success, and nothing else.
Frank, obviously we've discussed it, since 11:30 we've been on kind of talking about this is that press conference, and I know, the press conference seemed a little odd to you, the whole stepping down, is he retiring? It had a feel of, obviously speculating of Was he pushed? Was he, nudged? Whatever. Everybody has a different.
Talking about transfer portals.
And now he's talking transfer portals. He's a free agent, and how everything went, kind of went down. What is this? The way it's all gone down. What does this mean for, I guess, for Kyle Whittingham's legacy with the University of Utah? I mean, because. I mean, if he goes and he does, and if Utah is fine and they go, they're winning and it's not a problem, then it's, Utah fans, I think, are fine. But as soon as they have a bad season, which who knows, it could be this season. You never know what it's going to be like. And all of a sudden it's like, well, we had Kyle Whittingham just right there. So what does this mean for Kyle Whittingham's legacy with the University of Utah?
It means zero. I mean, his legacy with the University of Utah is on such solid foundation. I mean, it would take a scandal unlike you've heard any other to damage his reputation at Utah. Drive around Salt Lake City, drive up and down I-15, and there are billboards saying, "Thank you, Coach Whittingham. Thank you, Coach Whittingham." Nope, that never happens to any coach.
I thought you were going to bring up the Kyle Whittingham, "Give me your kidney." Billboards.
That one too. Yeah. No, I mean, there's nothing surrounding him except for adoration from the city, from the university, from the program. Look, I don't know what happened on the inside and why he decided to retire at this time. It never felt right to me. Like the person who I know is Coach Whittingham and his competitiveness and his desire to be in the game, and him stepping away didn't ever really sit right. But he just left the university at the right time. And not only did he leave the university at the right time, he left the university on very solid footing in terms of a football program. Great coaching staff in place. We'll see what happens there. I mean, there might be a few pieces moved around here and there. A guy in Morgan Scally who has learned under the best for his entire career. If there's a guy who hasn't been a head coach as prepared as Morgan Scally to take over, I don't know who it is. I can't think of anyone who's been better prepared under the scenario with Coach Whittingham at the helm. And so his legacy at the University of Utah has been forged over the last 21 years or so. And it goes, him taking the next step in his career leaves his legacy undamaged at the University of Utah.
Frank, what is Morgan Scally now going to go through as he may get a part of his coaching staff maybe picked apart a little bit? The Jason Beck piece, people are already talking about that could be, that he'd be Witt's guy at Michigan before he would, if he got that opportunity. And it's not crazy to think. It's not like he's been here less than 365 days. So in that case, if those pieces do move, how much of a challenge is Morgan Scally going to have right out of the gate, having to find not just the guy to replace him at the DC spot, but the OC as well?
I think the DC spot is there. There's probably a little higher comfort level there because, Coach, it started before Coach Whittingham a little bit, but Coach Whittingham is the architect of that defense, and whoever has coached underneath him has worked under that same system, maybe tweaking things here and there a little bit. Times have changed. I mean, and defense has evolved a little bit, but the basics are the same, and that's ingrained in the program. So the next piece in the puzzle, Morgan Scally isn't leaving. So I think there's a high level of comfort on what's going to happen on the defensive side. And even if you bring along a guy that doesn't have as much experience running a defense, the guy is there. I mean, Morgan Scally is there. So I think there's a high comfort level in being able to find the right person for the defensive side. And, that's just my assumption. We saw Coach Sitake struggle with that his first few years, and he's a guy that ran the defense for Kyle Whittingham. So it's not that it's like, it's not that it's going to be all roses, but I think there's a comfort level on the defensive side. Offensively, there's two guys in the state that I would look at if I were Kyle Whittingham moving on. offensively, defensively. Their names everybody's talking about. It's Jason Beck and it's Jay Hill. I mean, those are the two guys that I would take from the state to go with them to Michigan. So if you're talking on the offensive side for Morgan Scally, you know what? You just get thrown into the fire. Mm-hmm. And this is the first big test for Morgan Scally, finding the guy that can keep the continuity going on the offensive side. Because what we saw out of this offensive football team for 90% of the season was incredible productivity, the ability to score, and the ability to make up when the defense was struggling a little bit. That just, that hasn't necessarily been the hallmark of Utah football, and they got it this year. And so it's finding the right guy to maintain that continuity. There's a lot of good offensive football coaches out there. The University of Utah is at a level where when you say, if Morgan Scally said, hey, offensive coordinator position open, I mean, he's going to have a wealth of talent to choose from. And it's just finding that right piece on the offensive side. I think there'll be plenty of opportunity to find the right guy.
Frank, how quickly does Michigan become immediately able to not just compete, but to do the two big ones, which is beat Ohio State and then get back to that national championship game? I mean, those are dreams for Kyle Whittingham, right? I mean, this is a guy who got to two Rose Bowls, and I know it irked him that he didn't win those two games, despite the fact that he was a championship level coach. I mean, having designs on a national championship, I don't know if there's a better place to be able to do it.
The resources available at Michigan are different, and I think they're probably untapped. And there may be a new excitement about that football program with this hire. And so I would say, is it too much to ask in the first year? Probably. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole culture change that has to occur. And from what I understand, the culture inside the building suffered a little bit in the last year. Yeah. And we saw the craziness that's ensued. So, but here's what Coach Whittingham will do. He'll implement the right culture. And guess what? Not everybody's going to fit in that culture. And that's when people start, moving along, and you get the right people on the bus. That's what his job number one is, to get the culture right inside the building. And that, like I said earlier, that culture fits. Like, it's a pack your lunch pail, go to work mentality. And once you match that with the ability to attract talent at the University of Michigan, I mean, that seems like a pretty lethal combination to me. And so I would not be surprised to see him, first of all, institute that culture and noticeable year one opposing teams saying, when you play Michigan, you're in a dogfight. Like that is a dogfight. And then going from there, finding himself in a position to win conference championships, to compete in playoff games, and find himself maybe at the highest level in college football.
Frank, I have to imagine. I mean, obviously, we talked about Beck being high on the list. Witt has to absolutely love that offense that he's been able to had on as part of his team. Obviously, Jay Hill, you mentioned. Jim Harding feels like. I mean, he's I think Northwest Ohio guy. I think is what he's from that area. Like, it feels like Jim Harding. What he's done offensively, you got two guys going to the NFL. That feels like a guy that Witt has to be looking at, taking with him.
Jim Harding is a very interesting position in this particular hire, because Michigan has a guy in place that is very highly regarded. and so, I mean, I think Jim Harding has done an amazing job at the University of Utah. And certainly there's a familiarity with him and with Coach Whittingham. But you have to look at the resources at Michigan as well. And that is one, I think, that is very interesting to look at. So I think Jim Harding would be an amazing hire. but I would say that one is. I guess I would just say it's interesting because I think there's super talented individual in place at Michigan.
Grant Newsome, is he the offensive line coach? Grant Newsome, I think he's the guy who won as a Michigan dude. He's been there for a few years. I think his third year as the O-line coach. But yeah, they love him there. I mean, and they like it's interesting too because I think, and I can't remember who we were talking with earlier, Frank. They were saying, but if Kyle Whittingham comes, it's different than hiring another guy who's like a young 38-year-old who they say, hey, by the way, you're keeping these guys. It might be a different situation. Maybe Kyle is able to say, I want to be able to make every position, every coaching assistant, analyst, everything down to the grad assistants. I'm going to be able to bring whomever I please. I would imagine he'd be able to have some of that, but there are also some really talented guys. I mean, like, think about how. And again, even like the Obot kid, who was the 5-star commit to Utah as an offensive lineman, first 5-star guy in Utah history, and he comes out and he's an O-lineman. And guess what? They churn out offensive linemen to the NFL at Michigan as well. So Jim Harding does a great job. Man. It's tempting to think of being a Michigan man over, not just that, it's the NIL stuff that's involved with all of it, Frank. It's just all sorts of complicated, and it's an interesting time. I never would have thought in a million years we'd see a navy blue hat with an M on it with Coach Whittingham at the helm.
That's the truth. But the landscape of college football has changed, like you said. It's not. I mean, it's college football, but it's not. It's really interesting how it's unfolding. And I mean, let's look at what Texas Tech did this year. I mean, Texas Tech with a $30 million roster finds themselves in the playoffs when a year ago no one would have thought this team was headed to the playoffs. So resources now are much more significant. Resources have always been significant, but much more so in this NIL day and age. And the resources available at Michigan are going to give opportunities to surround yourself with talent. And so it would be really hard not to take that into consideration as a coach or as a student athlete when you're looking at what gives me the best opportunity to continue playing this game at the next level. And I think Utah has done an amazing job at the line of scrimmage on the offensive side. We've seen a lot of guys go and play and be very successful in the NFL. The issue is, like, if you took the number of Utah players in the NFL from the offensive line versus the number of Michigan players playing in the NFL from the offensive line, I think you'd see an interesting differential. And so when you talk about cranking out talent at the line of scrimmage, as good as Utah has been, Michigan may have an advantage there.
Yeah. Frank Dolce. Frank, did you have a good Christmas? We kind of interrupted your break. I'm sorry, man.
Frank always has a good
fantastic.
Christmas.
Listen. You didn't interrupt my break. I don't consider talking about football, talking about college football, and talking about one of my favorite people of all time, Coach Whittingham. I don't feel like that is an interruption at all. I do that anytime anybody called, especially you guys. When Lloyd called, I mean. Yes.
Got to do it.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Checks in the mail, right. Frank. Checks in the mail, my man.
Frank Dolce. Frank, we appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of the break. And when it becomes official, obviously, we'll get back into it as the new year turns over. It's going to be quite an interesting one the rest of the way. So transfer portal opens up on the 2nd. Got to be ready.
Absolutely. Hey, you guys are the best. I hope you enjoyed your holidays. Happy New Year. If I don't talk to you before then, we'll catch up soon.
There you go. Frank Dolce, everybody.
Frank, keep your phone by you. I'll call you next week.
Oh, there you go. There's Frank. It's a weird thing. Like, some of these guys, Kyle Whittingham leaving there's a personal connection that a lot of folks are losing too. And you think about, it's a mixed bag when you talk to the media about Whit and the interviews that he does or doesn't give. But he's always been a freaking straight shooter. He doesn't mess around. He might be.
He's worked with everybody for so long. He's been in this market for so long.
He's one of the most quick. He is a quick-witted dude. He's funny, underrated funny, because people just see the tough guy act all the time. But the reality is he's one of the funniest guys in all of college football, and he keeps it under wraps. But I'm telling you,
Utah blows out Arizona State. What does he call PK? He calls him Sparky.
Yeah, hey Sparky.
I mean,
it's good to see you. No, he will give it right back to anybody. He does not care. So, but yeah, you could tell. I mean, Frank is like, yeah. I mean, it's one thing for Utah to lose a great coach. It's another one that there's a lot of people that are in this community. I mean, this is his community, man.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. They just remodeled that house and everything.
So
it's like,
strange.
who cares? College football doesn't matter. The house will be there when you get back. It's fine.
You mentioned it's so strange to think of Kyle Whittingham wearing a Michigan
blue,
hat.
yeah.
Michigan blue
with that yellow iconic M on it. You think about the times when Harbaugh came into Rice Eccles and Whit beat him. You just don't. You don't think to yourself, well, Kyle Whittingham will get that Michigan job one day. You just think to yourself, no, he's building something here.
No, and he's hitting that point in his career where like he's going to retire here. He will finish his career here, and then he's going to go off into the sunset. But Kyle Whittingham had a little more left in the tank.
Yep. All right, we'll take another quick break here. When we come back, we're going to chat with Trevor Riley, one of the former students of Kyle Whittingham.
He's been saying Kyle should take that Michigan job. He's been saying that.
He's been pounding the pavement.
Yeah, he has.
So we'll talk to Trevor next. He's never without opinions. Trevor Riley joins us next right here as we keep you going. And yes, it's all but totally official that Kyle Whittingham is the next coach at the University of Michigan. Reportedly a 5-year deal being reached between the two parties, and it just takes Kyle having to break it to his former team and then likely going out to see his new team, Michigan, who's going to be playing in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando come next week. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come back. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Well, the program's in a good place right now. As I've said many times, after last season, just didn't sit right with anybody, particularly me. Came back and unfortunately we were able to get the ship righted and everything's on track. The program, like I said, is in a good spot. Got good coaches. Coach Scally will come in and do a great job. Got good players. So now is the time.
Welcome back, everybody. Alex, Kirry, Lloyd, Cole. Our producer, Alex Napolis. Today we've been going for almost 4 hours on the news that Kyle Whittingham is going to become the head coach of the University of Michigan. Now being reported by not just multiple sources. Now the multiple sources are saying that it's a 5-year deal even. The official word from the University of Michigan or from Kyle Whittingham's camp. Yeah, which one do you think will come out first? Whit dying to get on social media and say the deal's done. He'll be the one breaking it?
No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Nope. I bet he doesn't even have the password to his account anymore.
He has to reset.
He's locked out.
Jamie, you're going to get a code sent to your email. You tell me what that code is. I got to sign back into my account.
Can't send it to my Utah email because that doesn't work
that
anymore.
Doesn't work anymore. Oh, shoot. Yeah. It's a weird time to do it, but, the coaching carousel has its own timeline in college football, and Kyle Whittingham finding a gig at the University of Michigan after stepping down a couple of weeks ago. Not a total shock to us. I will say that I had multiple conversations going into the break of, yeah, no, that ship sailed. They're going to find somebody else. And I kept looking
hearing
at
people say,
I kept looking at Biff Poggi. I was like, this guy's not the guy. He's sleeveless in Ann Arbor. That's not happening, dude. Like, they're not going to allow, this guy who is basically part of the staff. He looks like he'd be a problem too. Like, there's just no way. It's wild.
I know Kyle Whittingham has some gas in the tank. I did not think that, wanting to go deal with that Michigan headache would I didn't have that on my bingo card. I just didn't. And everybody said, "Oh, Kyle Whittingham, yeah, he would be absolutely great for the job." Absolutely, is he the perfect man for that job?
The things that shocked me during all of this was, one, that the Detroit Free Press guy, Tony Garcia, said, yeah, his camp reached out to Ann Arbor after the stepping down.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm stepping down today, but why don't you call
my people?
Why don't you call somebody? Because and tell them I'm available. Why not? And let's have that conversation. They didn't get Kenny Dillingham. They didn't get Kalen DeBoer. And frankly, Oklahoma losing to Alabama might have been the thing that triggered this job opening up for Kyle Whittingham. Maybe Kalen DeBoer would have taken that job. He says he wouldn't have.
They had to be hitting a point, by the way, that they really had to be like, okay, we need somebody, and I had, if it's 50 to 60 million, which is what's being reported, like
for 5 years,
Kyle is getting paid.
Yeah, and he may have had to have been bought out at the University of Utah too, just because he had that advisory role. That he's probably saying, hey, if you want me to walk away from the advisory role, you got to buy me out of it, and I want you to buy me out of it because I got to find some other jobs here. It's like isn't it sad to see an old head coach having to go back to work? It's like he's not putting on the Home Depot, bib. He's walking over to the most prestigious job in college football, or at least one of the 4 in all of college football. And imagine that Ryan Day versus Kyle Whittingham back and forth that they got to do at the Rose Bowl back in 22, and I love that matchup. I love the idea of Kyle Whittingham getting there. It's so weird to see his face next to that Michigan logo on TV, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Won't get used to it.
No, we'll see. I did want to get out to one of the biggest Michigan fans on the planet and let you know what Provo Dave thinks about Kyle Whittingham coming to Michigan, because as a Michigan alum, he has a little bit of skin in that game. He might even actually have NIL skin that he's thrown into the game as well. But here's what Dave Portnoy took to social media to say. I think the cuss words are bleeped out, but guess what? This is the kind of guys you get, and he was pretty excited.
We are so back, I don't even know what to do about it. Listen, I was a little worried about this Michigan coaching search. Not gonna lie, I was saying, I hope we know what we're doing. I hope these guys in charge, I don't even know who that is, but I hope we have a plan because time is a ticking and I'm getting nervous. You saw Kalen DeBoer. No, I didn't want him. You saw Dillingham didn't get offered. I was like, oh, I would have loved Dillingham. And then what happens? Kyle Whittingham. Yes, Kyle Whittingham from Utah. 2 decades at Utah. One of the greatest coaches in the history of college football. Listen, Provo Dave knows him well. He built a powerhouse, tough, physical, man, Michigan-type football. I've heard Urban Meyer, he never dreamed this. I heard Urban Meyer whisper in production meetings at Big Noon Kickoff, man, that Whittingham's the best coach I've ever seen. And now he comes to Michigan. This isn't just rebuilding, restarting. This is the beginning of a dynasty. The Michigan ethos, the Michigan man mantra, it's back. This is an upgrade. I never wish ill will on anything. I never want my head coach to be having an affair with his executive assistant and then run into her house with a butter knife and threaten to kill himself in front of her and harm. Nobody wants that. But when you put your bet on a pillow, a Michigan man pillow at night, and you think how this thing shook out, honestly, it couldn't have shook out better. We now have one of the best coaches in the history of college football leading the best program in the history of college football. This thing, I couldn't be happier to welcome Kyle Whittingham to the Michigan Man family. He is an honorary instant Michigan man. And if I'm Ohio State, I'm not worried about the playoffs. I'm worried, will we ever beat this team again? It is great to be a Michigan Wolverine. Say it together. It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine. It's great to be a Michigan Wolverine.
I think he's excited.
Yeah.
You might be excited.
Just a little bit.
I love the hyperbole, though. The best coach, one of the best coaches in the history of college football, going to the best program in all of college football. You got to love the confidence from Provo Dave. Now, look, you can't deny the fact that Michigan, I mean, on paper, they have the most wins in college football history. And it's one of the few who have 1,000 wins, if not the only team who have 1,000 wins all time. And so
it's a legendary program.
Massive.
It is.
And
it's the blue blood of blue bloods.
If Kyle Whittingham is able to not just do well, But in that first 5 years, I say the first 5 years because 5 years he'll be 71. And a Kyle Whittingham 71 years old is the rest of us at 60. I'm convinced. And you could see them signing him up. He could do a solid 8 years at Michigan by the time it's all said and done. And if the deal is done today, like they're saying, and he has 5 years, you're only extending him by 3 to be able to get there. So
I feel like he's gonna coach in this Michigan Ohio State rivalry, and he's gonna think it's tame compared to the Utah.
Oh, you know rivalry. What? I don't know about that. This is the game, dude. This isn't like this one doesn't have a fun, quirky name to it. This is the game, dude.
Yep.
So, all right, Lloyd, you have fun?
You know what? I had a good time.
I don't think you and I have ever done almost 5 hours together.
No, it was fun.
Yeah,
we got to the point where they pretty much it's official.
Yeah,
we tried to make it as far as we could, and it's like, we got people that came on to talk about it. A big thanks to literally everybody on staff.
All of our staff, yep.
All of our staff. We had Frank Dolce check in. We checked in with a Michigan beat writer. Yeah. All of our insiders from Utah to BYU. Like, it was all hands on deck, and that's why you listen to the KSL Sports Zone, because nobody breaks it down and covers it better than us.
Okay. For Lloyd Cole, I'm Alex Kirry. Our producer today, Alex Napolis, nice enough to come in and also do some extra time as well.
Big time shout out to Alex Napolis. Hey, how was that sandwich, Alex? How was that ham? I brought in Alex a ham sandwich.
Yeah. Listen, Napolis and I have been talking about pozole and tamales, and I'm sure the ham sandwich comes in a distant third, but I'm sure it was good. It's fine. I'm going to go down.
No tamales, no pozole.
You think I'm not going to roll by the KSL fridge downstairs and have myself a gander? Some of that ham in the fridge?
I might go make me another ham sandwich.
Absolutely. All right. We appreciate you joining us here. You're going to get the biggest breakdowns, of course, right here on the KSL Sports Zone. A College Football Saturday Bowl edition is going to be tomorrow.
I'm sure they will be talking a little bit of Kyle Whittingham in Utah. I don't think it'll be just a BYU bowl breakdown. I think you're going to get a little bit of all of it.
We're going to get a lot, and we'll get you rolling there. So stay tuned in here. More to go, and you don't want to miss, of course, as we turn the corner on Monday as well. Across the station, you're going to get the full breakdowns, and we'll have a ton to talk about. So for Lloyd and Alex, I'm Alex. We'll see you next time, everybody. 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.